The scale at the hospital read 78 pounds. The doctor's face went white when she saw the number, but I just stared at it, remembering how Mother had smiled 3 days ago when she turned the key in the kitchen door lock. "No dinner for liars," she'd announced while Dad nodded from his recliner. Now lying on this emergency room bed with an IV in my arm, I wondered if they'd finally believe what they'd been doing to me all these years. 3 weeks before that hospital visit, our family looked flawless from the outside. We lived in a 2-story colonial house on Elm Street in Maple Grove, Minnesota, where the lawn stayed green even in August and everyone knew their neighbors by name. My mother, Grace Madison, sold more houses than anyone else at Coldwell Banker, her face beaming from bus stop advertisements throughout the suburb. My father, Robert, worked as a senior accountant at a firm downtown, always home by 6:30 sharp for family dinner. I was 16 then, trying to navigate high school, while my younger brother, Tyler, 14, breezed through life with the kind of confidence that comes from being the favorite child. He played JV football, got straight A's without studying, and had our mother's green eyes that crinkled when he smiled. I inherited our father's brown eyes and what Mother called that stubborn streak that needs fixing. Our house smelled like vanilla candles and fresh flowers because Mother insisted on hosting dinner parties every other Saturday for her church friends. She'd spend hours preparing elaborate meals, Tyler and I setting the table with the good china, while Dad selected wine from his collection in the basement. These evenings were performances, each of us playing our assigned roles. Tyler, the charming son who helped serve appetizers, Dad, the devoted husband who praised his wife's cooking, me, the quiet daughter who cleared plates and stayed in the background. "Sheila makes the best dinner rolls," Mother would tell her guests, patting my shoulder with manicured fingers. "Though she needs to watch her portions. A young lady must maintain her figure." The women would nod knowingly while I forced a smile, my stomach already growling because Mother had decided I didn't need lunch that day. She had a way of making cruelty sound like care, wrapping her control in concern for my well-being. But the real performance happened after the guests left. Mother would inspect every surface for flaws, running her finger along the baseboards, checking the dishwasher for spots on the glassware. Tyler always disappeared to his room during these inspections, but I had to stay and endure her critiques. "The bathroom mirror has streaks," she'd say even when it gleamed. "Did you use the proper cleaner?" "Yes, Mother." "Don't take that tone with me. Your father works hard to provide this home. The least you can do is maintain it properly." Dad would be in his study by then, door closed, pretending not to hear. He'd emerged only when Mother's voice reached a certain pitch, placing a hand on her shoulder and murmuring something about everyone being tired. Everything changed the night I caught Tyler in Mother's room. I'd gone upstairs to grab my history textbook when I saw him through the crack in her door, his hand in her purse. He pulled out several $20 bills and shoved them in his pocket, then carefully zipped the purse closed. Our eyes met as he stepped into the hallway. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he brushed past me, muttering something about minding my own business. I stood there, textbook forgotten, trying to process what I'd seen. Tyler had everything he wanted. Mother bought him new football cleats without him asking, slipped him extra money for movies with friends, never questioned when he needed cash for school events. Why would he steal from her? The answer came at dinner that night when he mentioned wanting to go to a concert in Minneapolis. "All my friends are going," he said, pushing peas around his plate. "Their parents already bought tickets." "Concerts are inappropriate for boys your age," Mother replied, slicing her chicken breast into precise pieces. "All that noise and those crowds. You're better off focusing on your studies." Tyler's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." After dinner, while washing dishes, I made my decision. Mother stood at the kitchen island reviewing real estate listings on her laptop. Dad sat in the living room watching the news. Tyler had retreated to his room again, probably counting his stolen money. "Mother." I began drying a plate slowly. "I need to tell you something." She looked up, eyebrows raised. "If this is about needing new clothes again, we've discussed this. Your current wardrobe is perfectly adequate." "No, it's not that." I set the plate in the cabinet, gathering courage. Earlier today, I saw Tyler in your room. He was taking money from your purse. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Mother's face went through several expressions before settling on something cold and dangerous. "Tyler," she called, voice sharp, "come here immediately." He appeared in the doorway, earbuds dangling around his neck. "Yeah." "Your sister has made a serious accusation. She claims she saw you stealing from my purse." Tyler's eyes flicked to me, then back to Mother. "That's crazy. I would never do that." "I saw you," I insisted. "This afternoon you took at least $60. "She's lying." Tyler said, his voice steady. "I was at football practice all afternoon. Coach can confirm it." Mother stood slowly walking around the island toward me. "Sheila, I'm going to ask you once more. Are you absolutely certain about what you think you saw?" "I know what I saw. He was in your room going through your purse." The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. My cheek exploded with heat as I stumbled backward, catching myself on the counter. Dad appeared in the kitchen doorway, newspaper still in hand, but he didn't move to help me. "How dare you?" Mother said, her voice low and controlled. "How dare you try to tear down your brother with your jealous lies?" "I'm not lying." Tears stung my eyes from the pain and the injustice. "Check your purse. Count the money." "I don't need to check anything. I know my son. He's honest and hardworking, unlike someone who spends her time making up stories to get attention." Tyler stood behind her, and for just a second, I saw something like guilt flash across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by the confident smile he wore like armor. "Maybe she's confused," he offered, playing the peacemaker. "Maybe she saw me getting something else from your room. You did ask me to grab your reading glasses earlier." Mother's expression softened as she looked at him. "Of course. That must be it." She turned back to me and the warmth vanished. "Apologize to your brother." "But I apologize now." I looked at Dad, still frozen in the doorway. He cleared his throat. "Listen to your mother, Sheila." The betrayal cut deeper than the slap. I forced the words out through clenched teeth. "I'm sorry, Tyler." "It's okay," he said magnanimously. "We all make mistakes." Mother wasn't finished. "Go to your room. Since you've chosen to be a liar, you've lost the privilege of eating with the family tonight." I climbed the stairs on shaky legs, my cheeks still burning. From my bedroom window, I could see the Pattersons' house next door, their kitchen light warm and inviting. Mrs. Patterson waved when she saw me, and I waved back, wondering what it felt like to live in a house where the truth mattered more than appearances. Downstairs, I heard Mother's voice, bright and false, praising Tyler for handling the situation with such maturity. Dad's rumbling agreement followed, then the clink of silverware as they continued their meal without me. I pressed my hand to my stomach as it growled already, anticipating the long night ahead. But I had no idea that this was just the beginning, that Mother's punishment would escalate far beyond a missed dinner. I couldn't have imagined how far she would go to correct what she saw as my fundamental flaw, the inability to maintain the perfect family facade. The irony wasn't lost on me even then. In trying to protect her from a thief, I'd become the enemy. Tyler kept his stolen money, and I lost my place at the table. It was my first real lesson in how our family worked, though I wouldn't understand the full implications until my body began to fail and the locks appeared on every door that led to food. That night, lying in bed with my stomach cramping from hunger, I thought missing one meal was the worst thing that could happen. I was wrong. Mother was just getting started, and she had 14 more years of parenting wisdom to draw from. What happened to her first daughter, I wouldn't learn until much later, when it was almost too late for me too. The morning after the slapping incident, I woke to silence. Usually Mother's alarm chimed at 5:30, followed by the shower running and the smell of coffee brewing, but that day nothing. I checked my phone, 7:15. School started in 45 minutes. I dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater, then headed downstairs. The kitchen was spotless, no sign of breakfast. Mother sat at the island, still in her silk pajamas, sipping green tea while scrolling through her phone. Morning. I ventured, grabbing my backpack from its hook. She didn't look up. There's no breakfast for liars in this house. But I need to eat something before school. You should have thought of that before spreading malicious stories about your brother. She finally met my eyes, her gaze cold. This is what we call correction through hunger. When you're ready to be truthful, you can join us at the table again. Dad emerged from the study, adjusting his tie. He paused when he saw me standing by the door, backpack in hand but no lunch bag. Grace, perhaps we should... Robert, we discussed this. United front, remember? Mother's tone brooked no argument. He nodded, avoiding my eyes. Your mother knows best about raising children. She's read all the books. Tyler bounded down the stairs, freshly showered and smiling. Mother had prepared his usual breakfast, scrambled eggs, whole wheat toast, orange juice, and a banana. He ate while I watched each bite, feeling like a small betrayal. Better hurry, he said between mouthfuls. Bus comes in 10 minutes. I left without another word, my stomach already protesting. At school, I tried to focus on my classes, but hunger made everything fuzzy around the edges. By lunch period, I was dizzy enough that I had to grip my locker door for support. You okay? Mackenzie appeared beside me, her red curls bouncing as she tilted her head. We've been best friends since 6th grade when her family moved from Wisconsin. Just tired, I lied, closing my locker carefully. In the cafeteria, the smell of pizza and French fries made me nauseous with want. I sat at our usual table, pulling out my physics textbook to pretend I was studying. Where's your lunch? Mackenzie unwrapped her sandwich, homemade bread, thick with turkey and cheese. Forgot it at home. She immediately tore the sandwich in half, pushing part toward me. Here, my mom always packs too much anyway. I wanted to refuse, but my hands moved without permission, grabbing the sandwich and taking a huge bite. The turkey tasted like salvation. Slow down, Mackenzie laughed. You're gonna choke. We were halfway through sharing her apple slices when I felt eyes on us. Mother stood in the cafeteria doorway, her real estate blazer, pristine visitor's badge clipped to her pocket. Our eyes met across the crowded room. She walked toward us with measured steps, her heels clicking on the linoleum. Students parted for her like she was Moses at the Red Sea. When she reached our table, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Sheila, sweetie, what a lovely surprise. Mom, what are you doing here? I had a showing nearby and thought I'd check on my daughter. Her gaze landed on the sandwich wrapper, the apple slices, Mackenzie's guilty expression. I see you've been taking advantage of your friend's generosity. I forgot my lunch. Mackenzie was enabling your manipulation. How embarrassing for her. Mother turned to my friend. Dear, you should know that Sheila is on a special diet. Doctor's orders. She's not supposed to eat during school hours. Mackenzie's eyes widened. Oh, I didn't know. I'm sorry, Mrs. Madison. It's quite all right. You couldn't have known about her condition. Mother placed a hand on my shoulder fingers, digging in just enough to hurt. Come along, Sheila. We need to speak with the principal. I gathered my things, cheeks burning as classmates watched. In the hallway, Mother's grip tightened. How dare you, she hissed, making yourself a charity case, begging food from others like some orphan. I wasn't begging, Mackenzie offered, because you manipulated her into feeling sorry for you. Is this what I've raised, a beggar and a liar? Principal Harrison's secretary looked up as we entered the office. Mrs. Madison, how can we help you today? Mother's public face slipped back into place. I need to withdraw Sheila from school. We've decided homeschooling would better suit her needs. Oh. The secretary pulled up something on her computer. That's quite sudden. Is everything all right? Family circumstances, Mother said smoothly. You understand? Within 20 minutes, I was sitting in Mother's Lexus watching Maple Grove High School disappear in the side mirror. My phone buzzed with texts from Mackenzie, but Mother plucked it from my hand and dropped it in her purse. You've lost phone privileges too. Liars don't deserve communication with the outside world. At home, she showed me my new reality. Padlocks on the refrigerator and pantry, the kind you'd see on storage units. A baby monitor installed in my room so she could watch me at all times. My laptop relocated to the kitchen table where she could supervise any schoolwork. Your education will consist of maintaining this house to my standards, she announced. Physical labor builds character, something you're sorely lacking. The first week blurred together. Wake at 5 clean bathrooms until they gleamed. Vacuum every carpet, mop every floor. Wash windows until my arms ached. Laundry sorted, washed, folded with military precision. All while my stomach gnawed at itself empty, except for the one small meal Mother allowed at dinner, a piece of plain chicken, steamed broccoli, half a cup of brown rice. I cooked elaborate meals for the family, standing over pots of pasta and homemade sauce, while my mouth watered. Tyler would come home from school, grab snacks from his personal stash Mother kept in his room, eat them in front of me while I prepared dinner. "Smells good," he'd say, crunching chips. "Too bad you can't have any." The scale in Mother's bathroom became my new enemy. Every morning she'd make me stand on it while she recorded the number in a notebook. 95 pounds, she announced after 2 weeks. "Still too heavy for your height. We need to see more progress." "Mother, please. I'm hungry all the time. I can barely think straight." "Good. Maybe without the distraction of gluttony, you'll learn to tell the truth." Robert came home one evening to find me on my hands and knees scrubbing the kitchen floor with a brush because Mother deemed the mop insufficient. He stepped carefully around me, heading for the refrigerator. "The locks are new," he commented, jingling his keys until he found the one Mother had given him. "Necessary measures," Mother replied from where she supervised my work. "Shalia's had issues with honesty and self-control." He pulled out a beer, popped the cap. "Maybe we should consider therapy. Dr. Brennan is supposed to be excellent with teenagers." Mother's laugh was sharp. "Therapy. So she can spin her lies to someone else? I think not. This is a family matter, Robert. We handle our own problems." He retreated to his study, beer in hand, leaving me to scrub the floor until my knuckles bled. When I finally finished, Mother inspected every inch before declaring it acceptable. That night, I lay in bed listening to my family watch television downstairs. The baby monitor's red light blinked at me from the dresser, a constant reminder that even my sleep was supervised. Through the thin walls, I heard Tyler playing video games, the beeping and explosions, a strange lullaby. The worst part was how quickly it all became normal, how Tyler stopped meeting my eyes at dinner, how Dad started working later, missing family meals entirely, how the neighbors waved but stopped asking why they never saw me anymore. Mrs. Patterson next door lasted the longest. One afternoon while I was weeding the front garden in 90-degree heat, she called out from her porch. "Shelia, dear, haven't seen you at school lately. Everything okay?" I straightened up, dizzy from the sun and lack of water. Mother hadn't allowed me any breaks. "I'm being homeschooled now." "In this heat, shouldn't you be inside studying?" Practical education. I managed gripping the garden spade to stay upright. Mrs. Patterson frowned, coming closer to the property line. Her eyes took in my sweat-soaked clothes, the way I swayed on my feet. "When's the last time you had some water, honey?" Before I could answer, Mother appeared on the porch. "Shelia's fine, Nancy. We're teaching her discipline through hard work." "She looks ready to faint." "I know my daughter's limits. Don't you have a bridge game to get to?" Mrs. Patterson's lips pursed, but she retreated to her house. I saw her watching from her kitchen window as I continued weeding, and later a car with official plates pulled up to our house. The social worker was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a notebook full of questions. Mother served her iced tea in the living room, while I sat silently hyper-aware of the baby monitor upstairs recording everything. "We've received a concern about Shelia's welfare," the woman explained, "particularly regarding education and physical health." Mother's smile never wavered. "Of course. I understand completely. You have a job to do." She produced a folder from the side table. "Here are Shelia's homeschool records approved by the state. As you can see, she's following an accredited curriculum." The papers were forgeries, I knew, but elaborate ones. Mother had thought of everything. And the concern about physical labor in extreme heat. Character building. We believe in teaching our children the value of hard work. Shelia has unfortunately developed some behavioral issues, lying manipulation, attention-seeking behaviors. We're addressing them with structure and discipline. The social worker turned to me. Shelia, how do you feel about your homeschooling? Mother's eyes bored into me. Dad sat in his recliner, silent as furniture. Tyler wasn't home safely away at football practice. It's fine, I heard myself say. I'm learning a lot. And the yard work? I like being outside. It's good exercise. The lies tasted bitter, but what choice did I have? Mother controlled everything food, water, communication with the outside world. If I told the truth and the social worker left without taking me, the punishment would be beyond imagination. The woman asked a few more questions, took some notes, then stood to leave. At the door, she handed Mother a card. If anything changes or you need resources, please call. We certainly will. Thank you for your diligence. When the door closed, Mother turned to me, triumph shining in her eyes. You see, even the state agrees with my methods. Now back to the garden. Those weeds won't pull themselves. I stumbled outside, the sun beating down mercilessly. Mrs. Patterson wasn't at her window anymore, but I felt her concern radiating across the property line. It should have given me hope knowing someone saw through Mother's performance. Instead, it terrified me, because now Mother knew someone was watching, and that would only make her more careful, more creative in her punishments. The locks were just the beginning. The real starvation was yet to come, and my body would bear witness to every calculated deprivation. By the time I collapsed in that garden 3 weeks later, the weeds had grown back, but I'd withered down to nothing. The spade fell from my hand as the world tilted sideways, and the last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Mother standing on the porch, watching me fall with something like satisfaction in her eyes. The homeschooling prison Mother created was more elaborate than any actual school could have been. She'd converted the spare bedroom into what she called the classroom. Though it contained only a desk, a hard wooden chair, and a bookshelf filled with outdated textbooks she'd bought at garage sales. The walls were bare, except for a clock and a printed schedule that began at 6 in the morning and ended at 8 at night. Structure is freedom, Mother announced on my first official day of homeschool. You'll thank me when you're successful like your brother. The schedule was a masterpiece of cruelty disguised as education. Math from 6 to 7, but the problems were written on index cards placed throughout the house, forcing me to hunt for them while completing assigned cleaning tasks. English from 7 to 8 copying pages from classic novels by hand because typing is a privilege you haven't earned. History involved organizing Mother's extensive collection of real estate documents by date while memorizing facts about American presidents. But most of the day was devoted to what Mother termed life skills: scrubbing toilets, hand-washing delicates, polishing silver. We never used cleaning baseboards with a toothbrush. She watched from various vantage points, calling out corrections and perceived failures. The daily weigh-ins became events I dreaded more than the hunger. Each morning at 5:45, before any water or the meager breakfast she sometimes allowed, I stood on her bathroom scale while she recorded the number. 92 pounds, she said after the 3rd week, tapping her pen against the notebook. Better, but you're still too heavy. Your bones aren't showing properly. Mother, the doctor, said my healthy weight should be... Doctors don't live with you. They don't see your laziness, your tendency toward gluttony. She closed the notebook with a snap. Today you'll have water and 1 apple. Nothing else until you show proper gratitude. The apple was brown and mealy, probably from the back of the refrigerator where forgotten fruit went to die. I ate it core, and all, even the seeds, while cleaning windows in the August heat. My reflection in the glass showed someone I barely recognized: hollow cheeks, protruding collarbones, arms like sticks. Tyler found me that afternoon reorganizing the garage, a punishment for missing a cobweb in the guest bathroom. He stood in the doorway eating a submarine sandwich lettuce, crunching with each bite. Mom says you're looking better, he offered between mouthfuls. I didn't respond, focusing on sorting boxes of Christmas decorations in the 100-degree heat. Sweat dripped down my spine, but Mother had forbidden water until the task was complete. You know, if you just admitted you lied about the money thing, this would all stop. I turned to face him, then seeing genuine confusion in his eyes. Somewhere in the past weeks, he'd rewritten history in his mind, convinced himself that maybe I had lied, that his theft was my fabrication. "We both know what you did," I said quietly. His face flushed. "I didn't. Look, even if I had taken some money, which I didn't, it wouldn't be a big deal. It's not like they can't afford it." "So you did take it?" "That's not what I said." He crumpled the sandwich wrapper, throwing it at my feet. "God, you're impossible. No wonder Mom has to discipline you like this." He stormed off, leaving me to pick up his trash. By the time I finished the garage, my vision was swimming. I made it to the kitchen sink, turned on the faucet, and drank directly from the tap like an animal. "What do you think you're doing?" Mother's voice made me choke. Water dribbled down my chin as I turned to face her. "I finished the garage. You said I could have water when—" I said water would be provided when you completed your tasks satisfactorily. She walked to the sink, running her finger along the edge. "This hasn't been cleaned yet. The garage was only part of today's assignments." She produced a padlock from her pocket, securing it around the faucet handle. "Since you can't follow simple instructions, you've lost unsupervised water privileges." That night, Robert came home to find me passed out on the kitchen floor. I woke to him splashing water on my face, his expression panicked. Grace, something's wrong with Sheila." Mother appeared in the doorway, calm as ever. "She's being dramatic. Probably held her breath until she fainted. I've read about teenagers doing that for attention. She needs a doctor." "She needs discipline. Really, Robert, you can't fall for these manipulation tactics." He helped me sit up, and for a moment I thought he might actually stand up to her. His hands shook as he held the water glass to my lips. But then Mother started crying, perfect tears rolling down her cheeks. "I'm trying so hard to help her," she sobbed. "But you undermine me at every turn. How can I fix what's broken if you won't support me?" Robert's resolve crumbled. He set down the water glass, went to comfort his wife. "I'm sorry, you're right. I worry." "I worry too. That's why I'm doing this. Do you think I enjoy watching her struggle? But sometimes love means being strong enough to do what's necessary." They left me on the floor while they discussed my manipulation tactics. I crawled to my room eventually, each movement an effort. The baby monitor blinked at me as I collapsed on my bed, and I wondered if anyone was actually watching or if the red light was just another form of control. The next morning brought a new development. Mother had installed a chain on my bedroom door, the kind hotels use. It allowed the door to open 3 inches, enough for her to pass through the single meal I was allowed, but not enough for me to squeeze through. "This is for your safety," she explained, demonstrating how the lock worked. "So you won't sleepwalk to the kitchen and hurt yourself." Days blurred together in that room. I'd wake to the sound of the chain rattling as Mother slid in a tray with whatever she'd decided I deserved, sometimes a piece of toast, sometimes just broth. Once nothing but ice cubes that I sucked on desperately. The textbooks gathered dust as education became survival. Through my window, I watched the neighborhood continue its rhythms. Kids rode bikes down the sidewalk. Mrs. Patterson tended her garden, occasionally glancing toward our house, with worry creasing her features. The mailman delivered packages that Mother signed for with a smile. One afternoon, the doorbell rang while I was attempting to complete math problems with a brain foggy from malnutrition. I heard voices downstairs, Mother's measured tones, and another woman's concerned questions. "Nancy Patterson told me Shalia's been absent from school. I wanted to check in, see if you need any support." It was Mrs. Williams, the pastor's wife from our church. "How thoughtful of you to come by," Mother replied. "Shalia's been struggling with some behavioral issues. We felt homeschooling would provide the structure she needs. I'd love to see her if that's possible. The youth group misses her." "She's resting right now. The medication makes her drowsy." "Medication. For her condition, you understand." There was a pause. Then Mrs. Williams said, "Grace, I've known you for 5 years. If something's wrong, if you need help with Sheila, our church is here for you. Everything's under control, but I appreciate your concern. Would you like some banana bread? I just made it fresh." They moved away from the staircase, voices fading. I pressed my face to the 3-inch gap in my door, hoping to catch Mrs. Williams' attention if she passed by, but the chain held firm. That evening, Tyler brought my dinner tray. Through the gap, I could see he'd grown taller in the weeks since school started his football training, adding muscle to his frame. He slid the tray through carefully a small portion of rice and a few green beans. "Mom says you need to eat slowly," he informed me, "and she wants the tray back in exactly 30 minutes. "Tyler, please, I need help. This isn't normal." He shifted uncomfortably. "Mom says you'll say anything to manipulate me, that it's part of your sickness." "What sickness? I'm not sick, I'm starving." "See, that's exactly what she said you'd claim." He backed away from the door. 30 minutes or she'll take tomorrow's meal away too. I ate the rice grain by grain, trying to make it last. Outside, I heard the family watching television, Tyler laughing at some comedy show. The normalcy of it felt surreal. How could they sit there enjoying sitcoms while I wasted away behind a chained door? Later that night, unable to sleep from hunger pains, I heard whispers from my parents' room. Dad's voice carried through the walls. "She's lost so much weight, Grace. Maybe we should reconsider." "That's exactly what she wants, for you to doubt the process. Do you want her to end up like Emma?" Emma. The name hung in the air like a ghost. I'd never heard it before, but something in Mother's tone suggested significance. "That was different," Dad said after a moment. "Was it the lying, the manipulation, the refusal to respect authority? It's the same pattern, Robert, but this time I know better. This time I won't make the same mistakes." What if the neighbors see what I show them? A troubled teenager getting the help she needs from devoted parents. No one questions a mother's love. Their voices faded, leaving me with more questions than answers. Who was Emma? What mistakes had Mother made before? And how far would she go to avoid making them again? I curled into myself on the narrow bed bones, aching against the thin mattress. 85 pounds she'd announced that morning, satisfaction coloring her voice. Still too much, apparently. Always too much, no matter how little of me remained. The baby monitor watched me with its unblinking red eye as sleep finally claimed me. In my dreams, I was sitting at a dinner table laden with food, but every time I reached for something, the plates moved further away. Mother sat at the head of the table, smiling as she ate, while a girl I'd never seen before sat beside her, transparent as glass, whispering a name I couldn't quite hear. I woke to the chain rattling and another day of measured starvation beginning. But something had shifted in the night. The name Emma echoed in my mind, a mystery that might hold the key to understanding Mother's methodical madness. I just had to survive long enough to uncover the truth. September arrived with a heat wave that turned our house into an oven. Mother refused to run the air conditioning during the day, claiming it was wasteful when only 2 people were home. She spent her mornings at the real estate office, returning by noon to supervise my education and ensure I hadn't found a way around her locks and chains. At 83 pounds, my body had begun eating itself. Hair fell out in clumps when I tried to brush it. Purple bruises bloomed from the slightest pressure. My period had stopped months ago, which Mother called a blessing less mess for you to clean up. The afternoon I fainted in the bathroom changed everything. I'd been scrubbing the tub with a brush, the chemical fumes making my empty stomach churn. The porcelain needed to gleam. Mother had found a water spot that morning and withheld my breakfast as punishment. My vision tunneled as I leaned over the edge, and suddenly the world tilted sideways. My head struck the faucet on the way down. Pain exploded through my skull as I crumpled into the tub, limbs tangled like a broken doll. Blood seeped from the gash above my eyebrow, dripping into the drain I'd just cleaned. Time passed in fragments. The bathroom door opening. Mother's sharp intake of breath. Not concern, but annoyance. "Get up," she commanded. "You're getting blood on the porcelain." I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. She grabbed my arm, hauling me upright. The room spun violently, and I vomited bile onto her shoes. Her slap sent me back to the floor. "Disgusting! Clean that up immediately." "I can't," I whispered. "Please, I need a doctor." You need to stop being dramatic. But something in my appearance must have worried her because she grabbed a washcloth, pressing it roughly against my head wound. Hold this and don't move. She left me propped against the bathroom wall while she cleaned up the mess, muttering about ungrateful children and ruined shoes. The washcloth quickly soaked through with blood. Tyler found us there when he got home from school. His face went white as he took in the scene. Me slumped against the wall, blood staining my shirt, Mother scrubbing the floor with vicious strokes. Holy crap, what happened? Your sister had an accident. Nothing serious. Mother didn't look up from her cleaning. She's bleeding everywhere. Head wounds bleed. It's superficial. Tyler knelt beside me, his hands hovering uncertainly. Sheila, can you hear me? I managed a nod, though the movement sent lightning through my skull. Mom, she needs stitches. We have to take her to urgent care. Absolutely not. I'm not spending hundreds of dollars because she can't watch where she's going. But, Tyler, go to your room. This doesn't concern you. For once, he didn't immediately obey. It does concern me. She's my sister. Mother stood slowly, the bloody rag dripping in her hand. Your sister is sick, Tyler. Mentally sick. This is just another attempt to manipulate us into giving her attention. Don't fall for it. Falling and hitting her head is manipulation. The falling was real. The dramatics afterward are calculated. She fixed him with the stare that usually ended arguments. Do you want to end up enabling her behavior? Is that the kind of man you want to be? Tyler looked between us, torn between his growing conscience and years of conditioning. Finally, his shoulders slumped. No, ma'am. Good. Now go start your homework. Dinner will be ready at 6. He cast one more glance at me before leaving. In his eyes, I saw the war between what he knew was right and what was easier to believe. Easier won as it always did in our house. Mother fashioned a butterfly bandage from tape and gauze, pulling the wound closed, with enough force to make me cry out. There, good as new. Now get up and finish the bathroom. Then you can start dinner. Standing required using the wall for support. The room swayed as I reached for the cleaning supplies, but Mother was already heading downstairs, satisfied that the crisis had passed. I finished the bathroom in a haze, then stumbled to the kitchen to prepare dinner. My hands shook as I peeled potatoes, the knife slipping dangerously. At the stove, I gripped the counter to stay upright while browning meat for the shepherd's pie Mother had requested. Smells good, Tyler commented from the doorway. He'd changed out of his school clothes into shorts and a t-shirt, his hair still damp from the shower. I didn't trust my voice to respond. The ground beef sizzled in the pan as I added Worcestershire sauce and frozen vegetables, following Mother's recipe by memory. Look about earlier. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Mom's probably right. You do tend to make things seem worse than they are. The spoon slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the pan. I bent to retrieve it and nearly didn't make it back up, catching myself on the oven handle. See, you're being dramatic right now. But his voice lacked conviction. I turned to face him, letting him see what I'd become. The skeletal arms, the hollowed cheeks, the bandage already seeping blood. When did you start believing her lies? He flinched. They're not lies. You're sick. She's trying to help you. By starving me. By teaching you discipline. Self-control. All the things you lack. Tyler, I weigh 83 pounds. Because you're manipulative. You're doing this to yourself to make us feel guilty. The words tumbled out, but I heard Mother's voice behind them, the careful programming of months. I turned back to the stove, stirring the meat with mechanical movements. One day you'll understand what she's done to both of us. I just hope it's not too late when you do. He left without another word. I finished cooking dinner, plated 3 servings I wouldn't eat, and called the family to the table. They ate while discussing Tyler's upcoming football game planning, which relatives to invite. I stood by the sink washing dishes as they dirty them invisible as furniture. That night, Mother allowed me half a cup of plain rice and a glass of water. Since you lost blood, she explained as if it were generosity. But don't think this excuses your clumsiness. I ate alone in my room, the chain on my door rattling with each movement. Through the walls, I heard Tyler practicing guitar the chords of Wonderwall, repeating endlessly. Such a normal teenage sound in such an abnormal house. The baby monitor watched as I lay down, head throbbing despite the ibuprofen Mother had grudgingly provided. Sleep came in fragments broken by pain and hunger and the growing certainty that I was disappearing. Sometime after midnight, my door cracked open the 3 inches the chain allowed. Tyler's face appeared in the gap illuminated by moonlight from my window. "You awake," he whispered. I turned toward him, too exhausted to be surprised. He pushed something through the gap, a granola bar and a juice box, the kind from his lunch stash. "Don't tell Mom." Before I could respond, he was gone, footsteps silent on the carpet. I held the contraband food, torn between desperate hunger and fear of being caught. Finally, survival won. I ate the granola bar in tiny bites, savoring each oat and chocolate chip. The juice tasted like liquid gold sliding down my throat. It was the first kindness Tyler had shown in months, and it terrified me. Because if he was starting to see through Mother's lies, what would she do to maintain control? How much further would she push to prove her twisted point? I hid the wrappers inside my pillowcase, evidence of Tyler's small rebellion. Outside, a dog barked in the distance, the sound carrying through the still night air. Normal pets in normal houses with normal families who didn't lock their children away and measure their worth in pounds lost. The next morning, Mother noticed the color in my cheeks. Her eyes narrowed as she studied me, searching for signs of betrayal. "You look different," she said, circling me like a predator. "I slept better," I lied. She grabbed my chin, forcing me to meet her gaze. "Don't think I'm stupid, Sheila. I know everything that happens in this house." But she didn't push further, perhaps afraid of what she might uncover. Tyler avoided me all day, guilt or fear keeping him distant. The granola bar and juice box became our secret, a crack in the foundation of Mother's perfect prison. 2 days later, Pastor Williams announced a surprise visit. Mother couldn't refuse without raising suspicions, so she prepared for the performance of her life. She dressed me in a loose sweater to hide my skeletal frame, applied makeup to cover the worst of the bruising. The bandage on my head was replaced with a smaller one, partially hidden by strategically arranged hair. "You will sit quietly and respond appropriately," she instructed, her fingers digging into my shoulders. "One wrong word and you'll discover what real hunger feels like." Pastor Williams arrived with his wife, both carrying concerned expressions and a casserole dish. They sat in our living room while Mother served coffee and store-bought cookies, the picture of suburban hospitality. "Sheila, we've missed you at youth group," Mrs. Williams said, her kind eyes studying my face. "I've missed it too," I replied carefully. "Your mother says you've been struggling with some issues. We want you to know the church is here to support you." I nodded, acutely aware of Mother's gaze boring into me. Pastor Williams leaned forward. "Sometimes, when we're going through difficulties, it helps to talk to someone outside the family. I'd be happy to meet with you, provide counseling." "That's so generous," Mother interjected. "But Sheila's doctor has recommended limiting outside influences while she works through her problems. Too much stimulation can trigger episodes." "Episodes?" Mrs. Williams asked. "Behavioral outbursts, lying, manipulation, self-harm." Mother's voice dripped with false concern. "We're following a very specific treatment plan." I watched Mrs. Williams process this information, saw the doubt flicker in her eyes. She looked at me again, taking in details. Mother's performance couldn't quite hide the way my clothes hung loose, the tremor in my hands, the careful way I moved to avoid pain. "Sheila," she said softly, "are you eating enough? You look quite thin." Mother answered before I could. Part of her condition involves food restriction. She tends to binge and purge when left unsupervised. The doctor has her on a careful nutrition plan. The lies flowed so smoothly, I almost believed them myself. But Mrs. Williams wasn't fully convinced. She pulled out her phone, showing me pictures from last year's church picnic. "Look how healthy you were here," she said, swiping through images of me laughing with friends, playing volleyball, eating hamburgers like a normal teenager. Such a difference. "Mental illness can manifest physically," Mother said, her tone growing sharp. "I'm sure you understand." The visit continued for another 20 minutes, dancing around the truth everyone could see, but no one would name. When they finally left, Mrs. Williams pressed a card into my hand. "My personal cell," she whispered while Mother walked Pastor Williams to the door. "If you need anything at all." I palmed the card, hope and terror warring in my chest. Mother returned as their car pulled away, her mask dropping instantly. "Go to your room," she said quietly. "We'll discuss your performance later." I climbed the stairs on legs that shook with exhaustion and fear. The card burned in my pocket, a lifeline I didn't dare use. Not yet, but maybe soon if I could find the strength. That night there was no dinner, not even rice, just water that tasted of rust from pipes that needed replacing. I lay in bed feeling my body consume itself and wondered how much more I could lose before there was nothing left to take. The baby monitor blinked its red eye, and somewhere in the walls the house settled with sounds like sighing. Or maybe that was just me breathing through another night in Mother's perfect prison, waiting for someone to see past the performance and save me from disappearing entirely. Mrs. Williams began her campaign subtly. The first visit after the formal one came 3 days later when she appeared at our door with a basket of fresh muffins for the church bake sale that needed taste testing. Mother couldn't refuse without seeming uncharitable, so she invited her in. Sheila should try one, Mrs. Williams suggested, holding out a blueberry muffin that smelled like heaven. Young people have the best palates for these things. Mother's jaw tightened. Sheila's on a restricted diet, doctor's orders. Surely one bite wouldn't hurt for the church. It was a masterful trap. Mother prided herself on her standing in the congregation. To refuse would seem petty and controlling. She nodded stiffly, and I took the offered muffin with trembling hands. That first bite nearly made me cry. Butter and sugar and plump berries burst on my tongue. I chewed slowly, making it last while Mrs. Williams watched with poorly concealed concern. "Delicious," I managed. "Take another," she urged, but Mother intervened. "That's enough. We wouldn't want to upset her stomach." Mrs. Williams left the remaining muffins for later. Though we all knew Mother would throw them away the moment she left, still that single muffin felt like a victory. The visits increased in frequency. Bible study materials that needed reviewing, church newsletters requiring feedback, fabric samples for new choir robes that demanded multiple opinions. Each time Mrs. Williams found ways to slip me small bits of food, a handful of crackers, a piece of fruit, half a sandwich she couldn't finish. Mother grew increasingly agitated, but couldn't find a way to ban the pastor's wife without revealing her hand, so she tightened control in other ways. The chain on my door was reinforced. My bathroom breaks were supervised. The baby monitor gained a companion that covered more angles of my room. One afternoon while I was cleaning the garage again, Mrs. Williams appeared at the side door. Mother was showing a house across town not due back for hours. "Quickly," Mrs. Williams said, producing her phone. "Let me document this." I stood frozen as she snapped photos, my protruding ribs, visible through my thin shirt, the bruises covering my arms the way my shorts hung loose on hip bones that jutted out like shelves. "This is evidence," she explained, typing notes rapidly. "I've been keeping records of every visit, every observation. My husband thinks I'm overreacting, but I know abuse when I see it." "She'll find out," I whispered, glancing toward the baby monitor mounted in the corner. Mrs. Williams followed my gaze and frowned. "She watches you even out here. Everywhere, always." "This is worse than I thought." She pulled a protein bar from her purse, pressing it into my hand. "Eat this now while I'm here. I'll take the wrapper with me." I devoured the bar in desperate bites while she stood guard. The protein and calories hit my system like a drug, making me dizzy with relief. "Listen carefully," she said when I finished. "I'm building a case, but I need more proof, and I need you to be ready. Can you tell me about any previous incidents? Anything that shows a pattern?" The name rose in my throat like bile. She mentioned someone named Emma, said she made mistakes before and wouldn't make them again. Mrs. Williams went very still. "Emma, did she say anything else?" Just that I was showing the same pattern, lying manipulation, but I don't know who Emma is. I'll look into it. She glanced at her watch. I should go before she returns. But Shalia, I want you to know you're not alone. We're going to get you out of this. After she left, I continued cleaning the garage with renewed energy from the protein bar. Hope felt dangerous in this house, but I couldn't help nurturing the small flame Mrs. Williams had lit. Tyler found me there an hour later. He stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, expression unreadable. Was that Mrs. Williams I saw leaving? My heart stopped. She was asking about the church newsletter. In the garage. She saw me through the window and came to say hello. He studied me for a long moment. Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a water bottle, tossing it to me. It's got electrolytes. Coach gave us extras. I caught it clumsily, staring at this second act of kindness from my brother. Tyler, I'm not blind, he said quietly. I see what's happening. I don't know what to do about it. You could tell someone, a teacher, a counselor. Tell them what that mom's strict, that she's got you on a diet. He shook his head. They'd never believe it. She's Grace Madison's super realtor and church volunteer, and I'm just a kid. Mrs. Williams believes it. Yeah, well, she's been around Mom longer than most. He turned to leave, then paused. That stuff Mom says about you being sick in the head, I used to believe it. Made things easier, you know. But watching you waste away, that's not mental illness. That's something else. He left before I could respond. I drank the sports drink slowly, savoring the sweet, salty taste and the fact that both Tyler and Mrs. Williams had risked Mother's wrath to help me. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. That evening, Mother came home in a foul mood. The showing had gone poorly, the clients deciding the house was overpriced. She took her frustration out on the kitchen, finding flaws in how I'd organized the spice rack and water spots on glassware that had been pristine that morning. Incompetent, she muttered, rewashing dishes I'd already cleaned. I'm surrounded by incompetence. Dad arrived home earlier than usual, carrying Chinese takeout. The smell of orange chicken and fried rice made my stomach cramp with want. Thought I'd save you from cooking tonight, he said, setting the bags on the counter. Mother's eyes flashed. I had a meal planned. Sheila was going to prepare it as part of her life skills education. Well, now she doesn't have to. He began unpacking containers, oblivious to the tension. I got extra spring rolls, her favorite. She's not having any. We've discussed this, Robert. Consistent boundaries. He paused, container in hand. It's just dinner, Grace. It's never just dinner. Every exception undermines the process. She took the containers from him, plating food for 3. Sheila will have her prescribed meal after we finish. I stood by the sink, invisible as always, while my family ate Chinese food and discussed Tyler's upcoming game. The spring rolls sat in their container untouched because Mother had declared them off limits and Dad wouldn't challenge her decree. After dinner, she gave me my allowed portion, 3 ounces of baked chicken breast, no seasoning, and 5 steamed broccoli florets. I ate at the kitchen table while she watched, timing me with her phone. Chew each bite 20 times, she instructed. Eating too quickly leads to gluttony. I followed her rules, mechanically processing food that tasted like cardboard. When I finished, she nodded approval and sent me to my room. That night, I lay in bed with Mrs. Williams' card hidden in my pillowcase next to Tyler's granola bar wrapper. 2 secrets that could destroy me if discovered, but also 2 proofs that someone somewhere gave a damn whether I lived or died. Through my window, I watched lights blink on in houses down the street. Normal families settling in for normal evenings. Kids doing homework at desks instead of locked-in rooms. Parents who fed their children instead of methodically starving them. The baby monitors watched me with their unblinking red eyes, recording every breath, every movement. But they couldn't see inside my head, couldn't monitor the growing determination Mrs. Williams had planted there. 3 days later, everything accelerated. Mrs. Williams arrived during one of Mother's open houses with a paper bag she claimed contained old hymnals for donation. Mother was trapped across town with clients unable to interfere. "Quick," Mrs. Williams said, ushering me to the kitchen. "Eat while we talk." The bag contained sandwiches, fruit cheese sticks, and bottles of Ensure. I fell on the food like a wild animal while she pulled out her phone. "I found information about Emma," she said quietly. "Emma Catherine Morrison, born 1992. Death certificate filed in 2007 in Duluth. Cause of death listed as complications from anorexia nervosa." I stopped chewing, processing this information. She was 15. Yes, and guess who her mother was? I already knew, but hearing it confirmed made my blood run cold. Grace. Maiden name Grace Morrison before she married your father. Emma was from her first marriage to a man named James Morrison, who died in a car accident when Emma was 3. So she's done this before. It appears so. I've reached out to people who knew the family in Duluth, the stories they're telling. Mrs. Williams shook her head. "We need to get you out of here, Sheila. This isn't going to end well if we don't intervene." "How she's too smart. She charms everyone." "Not everyone." Mrs. Williams smiled grimly. "I've been in contact with someone who's been looking for your mother for years, someone who knew Emma and has been gathering evidence about what really happened." "Who?" "Emma's father, James Morrison. He's very much alive, contrary to what your mother told everyone, and he's been searching for justice for his daughter for 17 years. The food turned to ash in my mouth. Mother had lied about Emma's father being dead, just like she lied about everything else. But if he was alive, if he had evidence— "He wants to meet you," Mrs. Williams continued. "He lives in Minneapolis now. He's been tracking your mother since Emma died, building a case. When I told him about you, he said he'd been waiting for this moment. She'll never let me leave the house. We're working on that. My husband is finally on board after seeing my documentation. We're going to petition for an emergency welfare check, one that can't be charmed away. But we need you to be ready. When the moment comes, you have to be willing to tell the truth, no matter how scared you are." I nodded, though fear made my hands shake. "When?" "Soon. Days, not weeks. Can you hold on that long?" "I'll try." She packed up the food wrappers, leaving me with several bottles of Ensure hidden behind cleaning supplies under the sink. "Stay strong, Sheila. Emma didn't have anyone fighting for her. You do." After she left, I returned to my assigned cleaning tasks, but my mind raced with possibilities. Emma's father was alive. He had evidence. Mrs. Williams was building a case. Even Tyler was starting to see the truth. The walls of Mother's perfect prison were developing cracks. That night at dinner, Mother seemed distracted. She picked at her food occasionally, glancing at her phone with a frown. "Something wrong?" Dad asked. "Just work. Some clients from the past reaching out with questions." She set her phone aside, but I caught the flash of concern in her eyes. "It's nothing important." But I wondered if it was James Morrison, Emma's not-dead father, finally making contact after all these years. The thought gave me strength as I stood by the sink washing dishes while my family ate. Change was coming. I could feel it in the air like electricity before a storm. The only question was whether I'd survive to see it arrive. The punishment began on a Thursday morning. Mother had found the empty Ensure bottle I'd failed to hide properly discovered behind the washing machine during one of her random inspections. She held it up like evidence in a murder trial, her face a mask of cold fury. "Explain this," she commanded. I stood in the laundry room, trapped between the wall and her body. I found it outside. I was thirsty. "Liar!" She threw the bottle at my feet. "This is from her, isn't it, that meddling pastor's wife?" "I don't know what you mean." Her hand cracked across my face, snapping my head sideways. "Don't insult my intelligence. I know she's been visiting. I know she's been feeding you." She grabbed my chin, forcing me to meet her eyes. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" "Mother, please." "No, you've crossed the final line. You want to betray me, conspire against me with outsiders, then you'll learn what real hunger feels like." She dragged me to my room, her nails digging into my skeletal arm. The door slammed behind us as she surveyed the space with calculating eyes. 3 days, she announced. 3 days with nothing but your lies for company. No food, no water, no bathroom breaks, nothing. Mother, that could kill me. Then perhaps you should have thought of that before betraying your family. She moved to the window, pulling the curtains shut and securing them with safety pins. Actions have consequences, Sheila. It's time you learned that lesson permanently. She left, and I heard the chain slide into place, followed by additional locks being installed. The sound of drilling filled the air as she reinforced my prison. When silence finally fell, I tried the door. It wouldn't budge even the usual 3 inches. I was sealed in completely. The first day passed in a haze of denial. Surely she wouldn't leave me for 3 full days. Surely Dad would intervene or Tyler would sneak me something. But as hours crawled by with no sound from beyond my door, reality set in. My body, already pushed to its limits, began shutting down almost immediately. The human body can survive weeks without food, but only days without water, and I was starting from a deficit that left no reserves. By Thursday night, my tongue felt like sandpaper. I tried to sleep, but cramps seized my stomach, doubling me over. The baby monitors watched me writhe on the bed, their red lights like demon eyes in the darkness. Friday brought hallucinations. Emma appeared in the corner of my room, transparent and 15 forever. She had mother's green eyes but a sadder mouth, and she whispered things I couldn't quite understand. Sometimes she was warning me. Sometimes she was welcoming me. She did this to me too, Ghost Emma said, sitting on my desk chair. Locked me in the basement for 5 days once. Said I needed purification. You're not real, I croaked, but my voice barely made sound. Real enough. Real as you'll be soon if someone doesn't save you. She tilted her head, studying me. At least people are trying to help you. I had no one. Dad was gone, or so I thought. The neighbors were fooled. I died believing I deserved it. James, your father, he's alive. Ghost Emma smiled sadly. Too late for me. Maybe not for you, if you can hold on. She faded as my eyes closed, unable to stay open despite my fear of never waking up. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing. Was it still Friday? Had Saturday come? The room was always dark with the curtains pinned shut. I heard life continuing beyond my door. Tyler's music, the television, dinner conversations where my name was never mentioned. Once I thought I heard Dad outside my door, but he didn't try to come in. The coward couldn't even check if I was still breathing. Saturday afternoon, or what I thought was Saturday, my body gave up pretending to function normally. I tried to stand and collapsed immediately, the room spinning violently. Crawling to the door, I scratched at the wood with fingernails that broke and bled. Please, I whispered. Someone, please. Footsteps approached. Tyler's voice muffled through the door. Sheila. Tyler, help. I can't. She'll know. She has cameras everywhere now. His voice cracked. But hang on, okay? Mrs. Williams came by yesterday. Mom turned her away, but she looked ready to do something drastic. Just hang on. He left, and I lay on the carpet where I'd fallen, lacking the strength to crawl back to bed. The texture of the floor felt strange against my cheek, like I was floating above it rather than pressed against it. Ghost Emma returned clearer now. Your organs are starting to fail. Kidneys first, usually. Then the heart gives out. That's how I went. Heart just stopped trying. Shut up, I mouthed, but she kept talking. Mom held my hand at the end. Cried real tears and everything. Told the doctors she'd tried everything to save me from my illness. They believed her. Everyone always believes her. Darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. My breathing became shallow, each inhale an effort. Somewhere in the house, Mother was probably cooking dinner, filling the air with smells I'd never taste again. Is this it? I asked Ghost Emma. Is this how it ends? But she was gone, replaced by memories that felt more real than the present. Birthday parties when I was small before Tyler was born. Mother pushing me on a swing. Her laugh genuine then. Dad teaching me to ride a bike. When had it all gone wrong? When had I become something to fix instead of someone to love? Time skipped forward. Suddenly it was dark again, but different dark. Night, dark. Sunday night. The thirst had moved beyond pain into a strange numbness. My heartbeat felt wrong, too fast, then too slow, like a drummer who'd forgotten the rhythm. Voices downstairs, loud ones, not the family's usual tones. I tried to focus, but my brain wouldn't cooperate. Was that Pastor Williams, Mrs. Williams? Why were they here so late? Haven't seen her in 3 days. Concerned, welfare check. Mother's voice sharp with indignation. Sleeping, medication, inappropriate hour. Then wake her up. That was definitely Mrs. Williams. We'll wait right here until you do. Footsteps on the stairs, multiple sets, the locks on my door rattling. Mother appeared in the doorway, backlit by hall light that seared my eyes. "Get up," she hissed. "We have visitors." I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "Sheila Marie Madison, you get up this instant and—" She stopped, finally seeing what 3 days had done. The puddle beneath me where my bladder had given up. The blood on my fingers from clawing at the door. The way my chest barely rose and fell. "Oh my God." Mrs. Williams pushed past Mother, falling to her knees beside me. "Call 911. Now." She's being dramatic. "Call them now," Mrs. Williams roared with a fury I didn't know she possessed. "Or I will, and I'll tell them exactly why we're here." Pastor Williams already had his phone out. I heard him giving our address, saying words like unconscious and medical emergency and possible abuse. Mother tried to take control of the narrative. "She has an eating disorder. She does this to herself. I've been trying to get her help." "Stop talking." Mrs. Williams cradled my head in her lap, her fingers gentle on my neck, checking for a pulse. "Just stop. We know about Emma. We know everything." Mother went very still. In the hallway, Tyler appeared, his face white with shock. Dad stumbled up behind him, reeking of alcohol, finally driven from his study by the commotion. "What's happening? Why are there people in our house?" "Your daughter is dying," Pastor Williams said flatly. "That's what's happening." The sirens came fast, filling the night with sound and light. Paramedics thundered up the stairs, professional voices, cutting through Mother's attempts to explain. They moved me to a gurney, started IVs attached monitors that beeped alarmingly. 78 pounds, one of them announced. "Severe dehydration, possible organ failure. We need to move now." As they carried me out, I caught a glimpse of our perfect suburban home from the outside. Neighbors stood on their lawns watching the spectacle. Mrs. Patterson had her hand over her mouth, tears on her cheeks. She'd been right to worry, right to call social services that first time. If only they'd listened. The ambulance doors closed on Mother's face, her mask finally shattered, revealing something raw and ugly underneath. The last thing I heard before unconsciousness claimed me was Tyler's voice, high and broken. "Mom, what did you do? What did you do?" Then there was nothing but darkness and the distant sound of sirens racing through the night, carrying what was left of me away from the perfect prison where I'd learned that love could be the deadliest weapon of all. The hospital ceiling had exactly 47 tiles. I knew because I counted them over and over as consciousness returned in waves. The beeping of machines provided a rhythm proof that my heart hadn't given up, even when the rest of me had. "She's awake," someone said, and faces appeared above me. A doctor with kind brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. A nurse checking IV bags that fed life back into my veins. And behind them, Detective Amanda Morrison, whose name I'd learned soon enough. "Sheila, I'm Dr. Martinez," the doctor said gently. "You're at Maple Grove Hospital. You're safe now. Do you understand?" I tried to nod, but my neck felt disconnected from my brain. My throat was too dry for words despite the IVs pumping fluids into my dehydrated body. "Don't try to talk yet," the nurse advised. "Your body's been through severe trauma. It needs time." But the detective stepped forward, badge visible on her belt. "I'm sorry to do this now, but time is crucial. Sheila, I need to photograph your injuries for evidence. Is that okay? Evidence. The word penetrated the fog in my brain. I managed the slightest nod. She worked methodically, documenting everything. The bruises layering my arms in various stages of healing. The infected scratches on my fingers from clawing at the door. The protruding bones that showed through tissue paper skin. Each click of her camera felt like validation proof that this had really happened, that I hadn't imagined the horror. Jesus Christ, she muttered at one point, then caught herself. Sorry, it's just, in 15 years of child abuse cases, this is one of the worst I've seen. Dr. Martinez returned with a woman in a white coat who radiated competence and controlled anger. Sheila, this is Dr. Sarah Chen, our head nutritionist. She'll be overseeing your recovery. Dr. Chen pulled up a chair, her expression serious but warm. I've reviewed your initial tests. Your body has been in starvation mode for months. Your organs are stressed but still functioning, which is miraculous given your condition. However, we need to be very careful about refeeding. Too much food too fast could actually kill you. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mother had nearly killed me with starvation, and now food itself was dangerous. We'll start with special formulas through your IV, she continued. Small amounts of liquid nutrition. Your stomach has shrunk significantly, and your digestive system needs to remember how to process nutrients. This is going to be a long journey, Sheila, but you will recover. I promise you that. The door opened, and my parents appeared, Mother still in the clothes she'd worn to church that morning, Dad looking rumpled and lost. Detective Morrison stepped between them and my bed like a guardian. You can see she's alive, the detective said coldly. That's all you get for now. She's our daughter. Mother protested, her public persona trying to reassert itself. We have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Morrison interrupted, which I strongly advise you exercise. Hospital security will escort you to the waiting room where officers are ready to take your statements. This is ridiculous. Sheila has a documented eating disorder. We've been trying to help her with padlocks on the refrigerator, with chains on her door, with baby monitors to watch her every move. Morrison's voice could have cut glass. Save it for your lawyer, Mrs. Madison. You're going to need a good one. Dad finally spoke, his voice hollow. Can we at least know if she'll be okay? Dr. Martinez answered clinically. She's severely malnourished with multiple vitamin deficiencies, dehydration, and signs of refeeding syndrome. There's evidence of repeated head trauma and various stages of healing bruises. Her condition is critical, but stable. See, Mother latched onto his words. She's stable. This is all being blown out of proportion. Get out. The voice came from me, barely a whisper, but loud enough to stop her mid-sentence. Get out. Mother's face went through several expressions before settling on wounded innocence. Sheila, sweetheart, you're confused. The trauma... Out. The word ripped from my damaged throat, bringing nurses running. Security appeared to escort my parents away. Mother maintained her composure until the door closed. Then I heard her voice rising in the hallway, shrill with indignation. Dad's quieter tones tried to calm her, still playing his enabling role even now. Detective Morrison sat where Dr. Chen had been. Sheila, I know you're exhausted, but I need to ask you a few questions. Your friends, the Williams, have shared some concerning information, including something about someone named Emma. Can you tell me about that? I looked at the IV in my hand, gathering strength. Then word by painful word, I told her about the overheard conversation, Mother's mention of mistakes she wouldn't repeat. Morrison took notes, her expression growing darker with each detail. We'll look into it, she promised. For now, focus on getting stronger. We've got a social worker coming to discuss temporary placement once you're medically stable. You won't be going back to that house. After she left, I lay in the quiet room listening to machines breathe for me. Somewhere in this same hospital 17 years ago, Emma had probably lay in a similar bed, but she'd been returned to Mother's care, sent back to the prison that killed her. That wouldn't happen to me. Too many people had seen the truth now. Dr. Chen returned that afternoon with my first meal, a few ounces of clear liquid that tasted like chicken broth mixed with vitamins. She sat with me as I sipped it slowly, monitoring my body's response. "Tell me about the weight monitoring," she said gently. "How often did your mother weigh you?" "Every morning, 5:45 exactly. She kept a notebook." "Did she have target weights? Goals she wanted you to reach?" I nodded. "She said I was still too heavy at 83 pounds, said my bones weren't showing properly." Dr. Chen's jaw tightened. "Shelia, I want you to understand something. What your mother did wasn't discipline or tough love or helping you with any kind of disorder. It was systematic torture designed to break you down completely. The fact that you survived shows incredible strength." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "If the Williams hadn't come when they did." "But they did, and you're here. That's what matters now." That evening, Tyler appeared in my doorway with a security escort. He looked smaller somehow, his confidence stripped away to reveal the confused boy underneath. 5 minutes, the guard said. "That's all." Tyler approached my bed cautiously, as if I might shatter. "I brought these," he said, pulling familiar items from his backpack, the granola bar wrappers he'd given me hidden in my pillowcase. I thought, evidence, right? Proof that I tried to help. "You did help," I told him. "Those small kindnesses kept me going." His face crumpled. "I should have done more. Should have told someone sooner. She made me believe you were sick, that this was all for your own good." "She's good at making people believe lies. She had years of practice." "With Emma." I studied his face, seeing real anguish there. "You knew, not knew, suspected." Sometimes she'd say things about her first daughter, little comments that didn't add up, and there were photos in the attic hidden in old boxes. A girl who looked like you but wasn't you. "What happened to the photos?" "Still there, I think, unless she's destroying evidence right now." He met my eyes. "The police asked me questions. I told them everything. About the money I stole, the food she withheld, the punishments. All of it." "That was brave." "No brave would have been speaking up months ago. This is just too little too late." The security guard signaled time was up. Tyler stood to leave, then turned back. "They're placing me with a foster family temporarily, the Andersons from church. Mom's fighting it, but the judge ordered immediate removal from the home." "Good, you'll be safe there." "What about you? Where will you go when you're better?" I hadn't thought that far ahead, couldn't think beyond the next IV bag, the next carefully measured sip of broth. "I don't know, but anywhere is better than that house." He left, and I was alone with the beeping machines and the certainty that our family, such as it was, had shattered beyond repair. But maybe some things needed to break completely before they could heal properly. The next morning brought a new visitor. A man in his 50s with sad eyes and gray-streaked hair holding a folder thick with papers. He didn't need to introduce himself. I recognized the shape of his jaw, the set of his shoulders. Emma had inherited those features. "James Morrison," he said quietly. "Emma's father. Mrs. Williams told me what was happening. I came as soon as I could." He sat carefully as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace of the hospital room. "I've been waiting 17 years to stop your mother from doing this again. I have evidence documents, witness statements from Duluth. People who saw what she did to Emma but were too afraid or too convinced by her lies to act until it was too late. She told everyone you were dead." His laugh was bitter. Easier than explaining why Emma's father was fighting for custody, documenting abuse, trying to save his daughter from her mother's love. Grace was always good at rewriting history. He opened the folder, showing me photos of Emma at various ages. The progression was horrifying, a chubby, happy toddler, slowly diminishing into a skeletal teenager with dead eyes. "I failed her," he said simply. "I let Grace convince judges that I was the unstable one, that my concerns were just bitterness from the divorce. By the time anyone listened, it was too late, but I swore at her funeral that if Grace ever had another daughter, I'd be ready." "How did you know about me?" I've kept tabs on her from a distance, hiring private investigators, periodically checking public records. When she married your father and had you, I started documenting everything I could from afar. But I couldn't act without proof she was repeating the pattern. Mrs. Williams provided that proof. He pulled out a business card. I've been in touch with Detective Morrison. Everything I have is now evidence in your case. 17 years of documentation about what she did to Emma. It establishes pattern and intent. Will it be enough? Combined with what they found at your house, the locks, the monitors, your condition. Yes, this time she won't charm her way out of it. He paused, studying my face. You look so much like Emma, but you have something she didn't have. What's that? People who fought for you in time, a community that wouldn't stay silent, and you'll have something else Emma didn't justice. He left the folder with Detective Morrison, years of pain and evidence reduced to paper and photographs, but it was enough. More than enough to ensure Mother would never do this to another child. That afternoon, as I managed to keep down a full cup of fortified broth, I thought about Emma, my ghost sister, Mother's first victim. She'd been alone in her suffering, isolated by Mother's manipulations and society's reluctance to believe a mother could systematically starve her own child. But I wasn't alone. I had the Williams risking their reputation to save me. Mrs. Patterson, who'd called repeatedly despite being dismissed. Tyler, who'd finally broken through his conditioning. Even Dad, weak as he was, had broken his silence when questioned by police. And I had James Morrison carrying 17 years of guilt and evidence ready to ensure his daughter's death meant something. The hospital room filled with flowers over the following days, cards from classmates I hadn't seen in months, balloons from church members who'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't known how to help. Each gesture felt like an apology and a promise we see you now. We won't look away again. Dr. Chen increased my food, slowly monitoring every calorie. My stomach shrunken to the size of a walnut, cramped with each addition. But I welcomed the pain. It meant I was alive, that my body was remembering how to be human again. Tomorrow we'll try soft solids, she announced proudly. Maybe some mashed potatoes. Would you like that? I started crying. Not from sadness, but from the simple promise of mashed potatoes, of choices about food that were mine to make. Dr. Chen held my skeletal hand while I sobbed, understanding without words that sometimes the smallest freedoms mean everything when you've had none at all. That night, I dreamed of Emma again. But this time, she wasn't a ghost. She was just a girl, 15 and healthy, eating ice cream in a park somewhere. She looked at me across whatever divide separates the living from the dead and smiled. Make it count, she said. Make all of it count. I woke to sunlight streaming through hospital windows and the promise of mashed potatoes, of justice, of a life beyond Mother's prison. It would be a long road back to myself, but I would walk it. For me, for Emma, for every child whose parents' love became a weapon turned inward. The machines beeped steadily, marking time in heartbeats, each one proof that I'd survived what was meant to destroy me, each one a small victory against the woman who'd birthed me twice, once in hope and once in hatred, and nearly killed me with both. Detective Amanda Morrison built her case like a prosecutor preparing for the trial of the century. She commanded a small conference room at the hospital, transforming it into a war room covered with timelines, photographs, and witness statements. I watched from my bed via video calls, still too weak to leave the medical floor, but determined to be part of my own justice. Your mother is claiming this is all a misunderstanding, Morrison explained during one of our sessions. She's hired Janet Blackwood from Blackwood & Associates, top-dollar defense attorney who specializes in affluent clients accused of abuse. Of course she has. I managed my voice, still raspy but growing stronger with each day of proper nutrition. Don't worry, what we have is overwhelming. Morrison pulled up files on her tablet. Let's start with Tyler's evidence. He backed up those videos to his cloud storage before your mother destroyed his phone. 23 separate recordings showing food restriction, verbal abuse, and physical intimidation. She played one of the videos. Mother's voice filled the room cold and measured. "No breakfast for liars, Sheila. You'll eat when you learn to tell the truth. A few days of hunger clarifies the mind wonderfully." "That's from June," I said, recognizing the shirt I'd worn. She'd just started the serious restrictions. And here's another from August. The next video showed me collapsed in the hallway while Mother stepped over my body, telling Tyler I was performing for attention and to ignore me. "I don't remember that one," I admitted. Tyler says there were multiple incidents you might not recall. Malnutrition affects memory formation. Morrison made notes on her tablet. "Now let's discuss Mrs. Williams' documentation." She spread printed photos across the table, images captured during those blessed visits when the pastor's wife had risked Mother's wrath to help me. My deterioration was stark in the progression. June's photos showed me thin but still recognizable. By September, I looked like a concentration camp survivor. Mrs. Williams also kept detailed notes of every interaction. Morrison continued. "Times, dates, exact quotes from your mother. She even recorded several conversations without your mother's knowledge, which is legal in Minnesota, as we're a one-party consent state. One recording played Mother's voice explaining my condition to Mrs. Williams. Sheila has always been troubled, manipulative. She'll do anything for attention, including starve herself. We're simply providing structure until she chooses to be honest and eat properly. The thing is," Morrison said, pausing the recording, "your mother might actually believe this narrative she's created. It's not uncommon in cases like these. The abuser convinces themselves they're the hero, saving their child from some imagined threat." "She mentioned someone named Emma," I said, "her first daughter." Morrison's expression darkened. "Yes, let's talk about Emma Catherine Morrison." She pulled up a new file, this one thick with aged documents. Born March 15, 1992 in Duluth. Died October 23, 2007. Official cause of death complications from anorexia nervosa. But thanks to James Morrison, we know the real story. The file contained hospital records, therapy notes, court documents from custody battles. Page after page painting a picture of systematic abuse hidden behind a mother's concern for her troubled daughter. Your mother was Grace Morrison, then recently widowed, or so she claimed. She told everyone Emma's father died in a car accident when Emma was 3. In reality, James Morrison was very much alive, fighting for custody and documenting abuse. Why didn't anyone believe him? Your mother was already perfecting her act. Pillar of the community, devoted single mother church volunteer. She convinced judges that James was bitter about the divorce, that his concerns were harassment. She even got a restraining order against him, claiming he was stalking them. Morrison showed me photos of Emma. The resemblance to me was eerie, same brown eyes, same stubborn chin. But where I'd survived to 16, Emma hadn't made it past 15. The parallels are undeniable, Morrison said. Same pattern of food restriction as discipline. Same isolation from peers. Same gaslighting about mental illness. Same escalation when the victim showed any independence. But people must have noticed, I protested. Teachers, doctors, someone. They did, but your mother was always one step ahead. She homeschooled Emma, too, claiming bullying at school. Switched doctors frequently so no one could track the weight loss pattern. Moved twice within Duluth to avoid nosy neighbors. And always had an explanation that sounded just plausible enough. A knock interrupted us. Tyler entered with the social worker who'd been assigned to his case, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Hendricks, who radiated no-nonsense competence. Tyler has some additional information, Patricia said. Tell Detective Morrison what you told me. Tyler looked healthier already, 2 weeks of proper meals and sleep-working wonders, but his eyes carried a weight that would take longer to lift. I found something in Mom's office, he began. Before they removed me from the house, I grabbed some papers she'd been hiding, financial records. He produced a folder, hands shaking slightly. She's been collecting life insurance payouts. There was a policy on Emma that paid out $500,000 after her death, and he paused, swallowing hard. She took out a similar policy on Shelia 2 years ago. The room went silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Morrison took the documents, scanning them with growing anger. $500,000 on a 14-year-old child, she said quietly. Premiums paid faithfully for 2 years, just waiting for the policy to mature before she killed me. I finished. That's why the restrictions got so severe recently. The policy must have passed the contestability period. This changes things, Morrison said. This proves premeditation, financial motive. This moves us from child abuse to attempted murder. Tyler wasn't finished. There's more. I found emails between Mom and someone named Dr. Harold Brennan. He's a psychiatrist who never actually met Shelia, but was willing to provide documentation of her eating disorder for a fee. Mom was building a paper trail to explain what would happen when... He couldn't finish. Patricia put a comforting hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing bringing this forward, Morrison assured him. This evidence is crucial. Over the next days, Morrison's investigation widened. Mrs. Patterson provided security footage from her home system that happened to capture our backyard, showing me doing yard work in dangerous heat while visibly malnourished. Several neighbors came forward with concerns they'd suppressed, afraid of confronting the successful real estate agent. The school district provided records showing my declining attendance and performance before Mother withdrew me. Teachers who'd noticed my weight loss but accepted Mother's explanations about stress and teenage rebellion. The school nurse who'd documented concerns but hadn't pushed when Mother provided that fake doctor's note. It's a pattern we see too often, Morrison explained. Abusers who are pillars of the community, who know how to work the system. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle, but no one sees the full picture until it's almost too late. Then came the breakthrough that would seal Mother's fate. Morrison had obtained a warrant for our house, and the search revealed horrors beyond even what I'd lived through. Hidden in the attic in boxes marked Christmas Decorations 1998, they found what James Morrison had suspected existed detailed journals Mother had kept about Emma. She documented everything. Morrison told me, her voice tight with disgust. Every pound lost, every punishment administered, every lesson taught. She was proud of her methods, saw herself as a pioneer in child rearing. There are entries about how other parents were too weak to properly discipline their children, how she alone understood what was necessary to correct a defective child. One entry dated just days before Emma's death was particularly chilling. Emma down to 72 pounds, still too heavy for her frame. She's fighting less now, which shows progress. Soon she'll be perfected, all the flaws burned away by proper discipline. I'm saving her from herself, even if she can't see it yet. And entries about you. Morrison continued showing me photocopies. Starting from when you were 12, she writes about seeing Emma's defiance in your eyes, about needing to act before you became irredeemable like your sister. The journals also revealed the truth about James Morrison. Mother had written extensively about the custody battle, her strategies for discrediting him, her satisfaction when the restraining order was granted. She'd even documented drugging Emma before court appearances to make her appear unstable, supporting Mother's claims about mental illness. This is a confession, Morrison said, written in her own hand across 20 years. She can't claim ignorance or misunderstanding. She knew exactly what she was doing. The investigation also uncovered a network of enablers, the fake psychiatrist Dr. Brennan, who'd provided documentation for a fee, a nurse at a walk-in clinic who'd been paid to falsify medical records, even a former social worker who'd been convinced to close cases without proper investigation. Your father is cooperating fully, Morrison informed me. He claims he didn't know the extent of the abuse, though that's hard to believe. He's agreed to testify against your mother in exchange for a lesser charge of child endangerment rather than conspiracy to commit murder. I felt nothing at this news. Dad's weakness had nearly cost me my life. His cowardice had definitely cost Emma hers. Whatever legal consequences he faced seemed insignificant compared to living with that knowledge. The media got wind of the story, of course. Real estate agent accused of starving daughter made for sensational headlines. Reporters camped outside the hospital hungry for details about the woman who'd hidden torture behind a perfect suburban facade. Morrison shielded me from most of it, but I saw some coverage. Photos of our house with its manicured lawn and cheerful yellow door, Mother's professional headshot from her real estate website smiling warmly at potential clients. The cognitive dissonance was jarring. How could someone who looked so normal be capable of such calculated cruelty? But James Morrison had warned me about this. Grace is a master at appearances, he'd said during one of his visits. It's how she got away with it for so long. People don't want to believe that monsters can look like soccer moms and sell houses and volunteer at church bake sales. The investigation revealed one final crucial piece of evidence. Hidden in Mother's closet behind designer suits and church dresses, investigators found a single box. Inside were two items, Emma's death certificate and a new life insurance policy application. This one for Tyler dated just a week before my hospitalization. She was already planning her next victim, Morrison said quietly. If you died, Tyler would have been next. The cycle would have continued. Tyler broke down completely when he learned this. All his certainty that he was the favored child, the good one, crumbled in the face of evidence that Mother's love had always been conditional and calculated. He'd simply been next in line. As the investigation concluded and prosecutors prepared their case, I lay in my hospital bed gaining weight ounce by precious ounce. Each meal was a small rebellion against Mother's control. Each pound regained was evidence of my survival. The final tally of evidence was staggering: 23 videos from Tyler, 47 photos from Mrs. Williams, hours of audio recordings, financial documents proving motive, medical records showing systematic starvation, witness statements from neighbors, teachers, church members, Emma's history providing pattern and precedent, and Mother's own journals, 20 years of documented abuse written in her perfect penmanship. She's going away for a very long time, Morrison promised. Multiple charges, including attempted murder, child abuse, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. The prosecutor is confident we'll get convictions on all counts. But more importantly than Mother's fate was my own. Surviving wasn't enough. I needed to rebuild, and that would prove to be its own challenge, one that would require more strength than simply enduring hunger. The investigation had revealed the truth. Now came the harder task, learning to live with it. The video deposition took place in a hospital conference room converted into a makeshift courtroom. I sat propped in a wheelchair, still too weak to stand for long periods, but determined to face Mother one last time before the criminal trial. She appeared on the screen from the county jail orange jumpsuit, replacing her usual real estate blazer hair flat without her expensive styling tools. Even in prison, she tried to control the narrative. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. She began addressing the camera more than the prosecutor. I've been a devoted mother trying to help a troubled child. Shalia has always had issues with food, with honesty, with... Mrs. Madison, the prosecutor interrupted. We're not here for opening statements. Please answer only the questions asked. Mother's jaw tightened, but she nodded. For 2 hours, I watched her weave lies with truth, creating a version of reality where she was the victim. According to her, I'd been secretly bulimic, sneaking food and purging. The locks were to protect me from myself. The monitoring was for my safety. Every cruelty reframed as care. What about Emma? The prosecutor finally asked. Your first daughter who died under remarkably similar circumstances. Mother's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw underneath. Emma was sick. I tried everything to save her, but she refused help. Her death destroyed me. When I saw Shalia heading down the same path, I couldn't bear to lose another daughter. So you starved her. I provided structure and discipline to combat her self-destructive behaviors. You kept journals documenting every pound lost, every punishment. Those don't sound like the actions of a concerned mother. Documentation was recommended by the therapists I consulted. Keep track of patterns, behaviors, progress. Which therapists? We found no record of Sheila seeing any mental health professionals. Mother paused, recalculating. Online resources, support groups for parents of troubled teens. I did extensive research. The prosecutor pulled up excerpts from Mother's journals, reading them aloud. Her own words condemned her detailed plans to reduce my weight satisfaction when I became too weak to resist comparisons to Emma's transformation. But the most damning evidence came when they played a recording Mrs. Williams had made. Mother's voice clear and cold. Emma reached 72 pounds before her heart gave out. Sheila's stronger. She can go lower. I was speaking hypothetically, Mother insisted. Taken out of context. The context, the prosecutor said, was you explaining to Mrs. Williams why you weren't concerned about Sheila's weight loss. This wasn't hypothetical. This was you using your dead daughter as a benchmark for how far you could push your living one. Mother's lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. Her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, and everyone could see it. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Mrs. Madison, we've been in contact with Emma's father, James Morrison. He's provided documentation that contradicts your version of events. Would you like to revise your statement about his death? Mother went very still. I don't know what you mean. You told everyone, including your current husband, that James died in a car accident when Emma was 3. But he's very much alive. He's been documenting your actions for 17 years. He has recordings, photos, court documents from custody hearings where you were accused of abuse. James is mentally unstable. That's why I had to protect Emma from him. With a restraining order based on false allegations, the prosecutor produced documents. We have affidavits from witnesses who saw you coaching Emma to lie about her father, threatening her with starvation if she didn't comply. Mother's composure finally cracked. You don't understand. James would have ruined everything. He didn't understand what Emma needed. She was defective, broken. I was fixing her by starving her to death. She did that to herself. She was weak, just like Sheila. They inherited his weakness, his inability to achieve perfection. I tried to burn it out of them to make them strong, but they fought me at every turn. Her lawyer was frantically trying to stop her, but Mother had passed the point of control. Years of carefully maintained facade shattered as she ranted about weakness and perfection, about children who refused to be molded, about a world that didn't understand her vision. I gave them everything, a beautiful home opportunities structure. All I asked in return was obedience and gratitude. But they were liars, both of them. Sneaking around, conspiring with others, making me look like a monster, when all I wanted was to create something perfect. So you decided to kill them? I decided to fix them. If that meant reducing them to nothing and rebuilding from scratch, so be it. You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs. Children aren't eggs, Mrs. Madison. They're human beings. Defective human beings, Emma with her father's weakness, Sheila with her lies and manipulation. Even Tyler was starting to show signs of corruption. They all needed correction. The deposition ended with Mother in full meltdown, screaming about ungrateful children and a world too blind to see her wisdom. Guards had to restrain her as she lunged at the camera, her final words a promise that she'd been right all along and someday everyone would see it. I sat in stunned silence as the screen went dark. Beside me, Morrison shook her head. Well, that's what we call a gift to the prosecution. No jury will have sympathy after seeing that. But I felt something unexpected pity. Not forgiveness, never that. But pity for a woman so broken she'd convinced herself that torturing children was love. Who'd rather see her daughters dead than imperfect. Who'd built such an elaborate delusion she'd live in it forever rather than face the truth. James Morrison watched the deposition with me the next day. He looked older than his years, worn down by nearly 2 decades of fighting for justice he'd never thought would come. She was like that during our marriage, too, he said quietly. Not as extreme, but the signs were there. The need for control, the inability to accept any deviation from her plans. When Emma was born premature and spent weeks in NICU, Grace saw it as a personal failure. She became obsessed with making Emma perfect to compensate. "Why didn't you leave sooner?" I tried, but she was smart even then. Made me look like the unstable one. Told people I was abusive, that she was protecting Emma from me. By the time I got evidence of what she was really doing, judges had already decided I was the problem. He pulled out a worn photo of Emma as a toddler, chubby-cheeked and grinning. This was before Grace started her improvements. Emma was a happy kid, loved mac and cheese, Saturday morning cartoons, playing in puddles, normal kid stuff that Grace saw as flaws to be corrected. What was she like at the end? James's eyes filled with tears. Broken. She'd internalized so much of Grace's poison that she believed she deserved the punishment. Her last words to me were an apology for not being the daughter her mother wanted. Can you imagine apologizing for not being perfect enough to deserve food and love? We sat in silence, united by our shared understanding of Mother's particular brand of cruelty. But where Emma had died believing the lies, I'd lived long enough to see them exposed. That evening, Dr. Chen brought news that felt like a miracle. Your blood work is improving dramatically. Organ function is stabilizing. At this rate, you'll be ready for outpatient treatment within a week. Where will I go? The question had haunted me since realizing I'd never return to that house. There's a therapeutic foster home that specializes in cases like yours. The Brennan family, not related to that fraudulent psychiatrist, have experience with survivors of severe abuse. They'll help you transition while continuing treatment. Tyler visited that night looking haunted by the deposition revelations. "She was going to do it to me too," he said without preamble. "I found more journals hidden in her room, plans for my transformation after you were gone. Weight goals, punishment schedules, everything." "You were the golden child," I reminded him gently. "Only as long as I was useful. The second I started questioning her showing independence," he shuddered. "I keep thinking about Emma. We could have had a sister. Should have had one. But Mom killed her and then tried to kill you and eventually would have killed me. How does someone become that?" I didn't have answers. The investigation had revealed the what of Mother's crimes, but not the why. Maybe there was no why that would make sense to anyone not living in her twisted reality. The truth about Grace Madison was simpler and more terrible than any of us had imagined. She wasn't a misguided parent who went too far. She wasn't struggling with her own trauma or mental illness that might explain if not excuse her actions. She was a predator who'd found the perfect hunting ground, her own family, where her authority was absolute and her victims had nowhere to run. The investigation had one final revelation. Hidden in a safety deposit box, investigators found adoption papers. Grace had been planning to adopt after my death, specifically requesting a daughter between ages 10 and 12. The cycle would have continued: indefinitely adopt, abuse, collect insurance, repeat, if Mrs. Williams hadn't intervened when she did. "How many?" I asked Morrison. "If we hadn't stopped her, how many girls would she have killed?" "As many as she could get away with," Morrison replied honestly. "People like your mother don't stop on their own. They escalate until someone stops them." I thought about that as I lay in my hospital bed that night, finally alone with my thoughts. Mother was stopped now, facing life in prison, her delusions of martyrdom playing to an audience of criminals who'd heard it all before. Dad would serve time too, though less his weakness finally carrying consequences. Tyler was safe with his foster family getting therapy to process the minefield of our childhood. And I was alive, damaged but breathing, 88 pounds now and gaining, each meal a choice I got to make each pound proof that Mother's vision of perfection hadn't won. The truth about Grace Madison was that she'd been a monster hiding in plain sight, using motherhood as a weapon and love as camouflage. But the greater truth was that she'd failed. Emma's death hadn't been for nothing. It had created a witness in James Morrison who'd waited 17 years for justice. My survival had exposed her, completely stripped away every lie until only the ugly reality remained. Tomorrow I'd leave the hospital for the first time since that night the Williams saved me. I'd begin the long process of learning to live without locks on doors and cameras watching every move. It would be hard. Recovery isn't as simple as gaining weight and testifying in court. But tonight I celebrated a simple victory. I'd eaten dinner. 3 small pieces of lasagna, a side salad, 2 breadsticks, and even a few bites of chocolate cake. Dr. Chen had smiled as she watched me clean my plate, no longer fearing that food was a trap or a test. "You're reclaiming yourself," she'd said. "Every bite is a revolution against what was done to you." She was right. Mother had tried to erase me 1 pound at a time. Now I was writing myself back into existence, 1 meal at a time. It was the ultimate rebellion against a woman who'd preferred her daughters dead over imperfect. We were magnificently, stubbornly, imperfectly alive. And that was a perfection Grace Madison would never understand. The Brennan house smelled like cinnamon rolls and coffee when I arrived on a Thursday morning in October. Patricia Hendricks, my social worker, carried my single bag of possessions while I navigated the front steps on legs, still unsteady from months of starvation. The therapeutic foster parents, Linda and Marcus Brennan, waited on the porch with warm smiles that didn't quite hide their shock at my appearance. "Welcome home, Sheila," Linda said softly. She was a round woman with silver-streaked hair and gentle hands that had guided 17 other traumatized children toward healing. "We've prepared the downstairs bedroom so you won't have to manage stairs until you're stronger." The house felt alien in its normalcy. No locks on the refrigerator, no cameras in corners, no chains on doors. Just a lived-in home with mismatched furniture and walls covered in photos of former foster children who still kept in touch. "The kitchen is always open," Marcus explained, leading me through the house. "Day or night. If you're hungry, you eat. No permission needed, no explanations required." I stared at the pantry door slightly ajar, revealing shelves stocked with food. My hand trembled as I reached toward it, half expecting someone to slap it away. "It's okay," Linda assured me. "This is going to take time to feel normal. There's no rush." That first night, I woke at 2 a.m. with familiar hunger pangs. For months, these had been my constant companion, but now I could do something about them. I crept to the kitchen, still moving silently from habit, and found Marcus sitting at the table with a cup of tea. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked casually. "Linda baked extra cinnamon rolls. They're in the container on the counter." I took one, then looked at him fearfully. "Just one?" "Take as many as you want, sweetheart. That's what they're there for." I ate 3 rolls, slowly savoring each bite, while Marcus read his book, pretending this middle-of-the-night feast was perfectly normal. Maybe in this house it was. The next morning brought my first meeting with Jennifer Brooks, the attorney who'd taken my case pro bono after seeing the media coverage. She arrived in a sharp suit that reminded me painfully of Mother's real estate attire, but her eyes held a fierceness that was entirely different. "I specialize in cases like yours," she explained, spreading documents across the Brennans' dining table. "Children failed by systems meant to protect them. Your mother had 23 different complaints filed against her over the years from neighbors, teachers, that first social worker. Every single one was dismissed or minimized." 23. I couldn't hide my shock. That many people suspected. "And yet you nearly died because no one connected the dots. That's what we're going to address. Not just criminal charges against your parents, but civil action against the agencies that failed to protect you." She outlined the strategy criminal trial first, where I'd testify against Mother and Dad, then civil suits against the school district that ignored obvious signs, the social services department that closed cases without proper investigation, and Dr. Brennan, the fake psychiatrist, who'd provided cover for Mother's abuse. "You're going to be in the public eye," Jennifer warned. "The media is calling this the perfect mother murder plot. They'll want interviews, exclusive stories, your pain packaged for consumption. You don't have to give them anything. But I surprised myself by disagreeing. No, I want to talk. Emma couldn't speak for herself. Neither could I for so long. If telling my story stops even one parent from doing this one child from suffering, then I need to speak. The first interview was with a journalist named Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen's sister, as it turned out. She specialized in investigative pieces about child welfare failures. We met at the Brennan's house where I felt safe, and I told my story from the beginning. Your mother presented such a perfect facade, Sarah noted. How do we teach people to see through that? Stop believing that abuse only looks one way. I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. Stop assuming that well-dressed, well-spoken parents can't be monsters. Stop prioritizing family preservation over child safety. Emma died because people gave Mother the benefit of the doubt. I almost died for the same reason. The article ran with the headline, "The Daughter Who Lived, Shelia Madison Speaks Out." Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. Messages poured in from other survivors, other children trapped in perfect-looking homes, with parents who wielded love like a weapon. Tyler struggled more with the media attention. His foster family, the Andersons, tried to shield him, but reporters found ways to approach him at school after football practice, even at church. He finally agreed to one interview sitting beside me on the Brennan's couch, our shared trauma making us siblings in a way blood never had. I was the golden child, he admitted to the camera. I thought that made me safe, but I found evidence that she was planning the same thing for me. The only reason I'm alive is because Shelia survived long enough to expose everything. Do you blame her? The interviewer asked. Your mother... Tyler's jaw clenched. I blame her for everything. For killing Emma, for nearly killing Shelia, for making me complicit through my silence, for making me believe lies about my own sister. That's not motherhood. I don't even have words for what that is. The criminal trial began in January. By then I'd gained 25 pounds and could walk without assistance, though I still tired easily. Jennifer had prepared me thoroughly, but nothing could ready me for seeing Mother again. She'd lost weight in jail, her carefully maintained appearance crumbling without access to her arsenal of beauty products. But her eyes remained the same cold, calculating, utterly convinced of her own righteousness. She looks smaller, I whispered to Jennifer. That's because you're stronger, she replied. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Tyler's videos played on courtroom screens, showing Mother's cruel pronouncements about food and punishment. My hospital photos drew gasps from the jury's skeletal limbs, protruding ribs, the body of a concentration camp victim in suburban Minnesota. Mrs. Williams testified about her months of documentation, her voice breaking as she described watching me deteriorate while feeling powerless to intervene faster. I pray every night for forgiveness, she said, for not acting sooner, for not pushing harder. I let politeness nearly cost a child's life. James Morrison took the stand with 17 years of evidence about Emma. He presented journals, medical records, correspondence with lawyers and child services. His testimony painted a picture of a woman who'd refined her methods over decades, learning from each failed attempt to hide abuse. She killed my daughter, he stated flatly, and she was days away from killing Shelia. This wasn't mental illness or misguided parenting. This was calculated, deliberate torture designed to maintain absolute control. When Dad testified as part of his plea agreement, he couldn't meet my eyes. He detailed Mother's methods, the gradual escalation, his own cowardice in facing the truth. I told myself it was discipline, he admitted. That Grace knew best about raising children. I worked late to avoid seeing what was happening. I drank to avoid thinking about it. I failed as a father and as a human being. Did you know she was killing your daughter? The prosecutor asked. Dad's voice broke. Yes, part of me knew, and I did nothing to stop it. Mother's defense relied on painting me as mentally ill, a troubled teen who'd manipulated everyone into believing lies. Her attorney presented carefully selected excerpts from her journals, trying to reframe documentation of abuse as concerned note-taking about a sick child. But then I took the stand. Jennifer had coached me to stay calm, to speak clearly, to let the truth be enough. But facing Mother across that courtroom, seeing her lips pursed in familiar disapproval, I felt 16 again, starving and desperate for approval that would never come. "Tell us about the last 3 days," the prosecutor prompted gently. "The lock-in that led to your hospitalization." I spoke about the darkness, the hallucinations, the certainty that I would die alone in that room, about scratching at the door until my fingers bled, about Tyler's voice through the wood wanting to help but too terrified to act. "She said it was for my own good," I continued, "that I needed to learn through suffering. But the only thing I learned was that my mother preferred me dead to imperfect." "Objection," Mother's lawyer called out. "Speculation about intent." "Sustained," the judge said, but the damage was done. The jury had heard the truth in my voice. Cross-examination was brutal. Mother's lawyer tried every trick to discredit me, to make me appear unstable or vindictive, but I held firm, anchored by the truth and the knowledge that Emma deserved justice, even if she couldn't speak for herself. "Isn't it true you've always been jealous of your brother?" the lawyer pressed. "I was jealous that he got to eat," I replied simply. "That's not the same thing." "You claim your mother starved you, but you admit sneaking food. How do we know you weren't eating in secret and lying about it?" "Because I weighed 78 pounds when they brought me to the hospital. You can't fake that." The lawyer tried several more angles, but each question only reinforced the horror of what had been done to me. Finally, in frustration, he asked, "If things were so terrible, why didn't you just leave?" The courtroom went silent. It was the question everyone wondered, but few dared ask. I looked at Mother, then at the jury, then at James Morrison in the gallery holding a photo of Emma. "Where would I go?" I asked quietly. She was my mother. She controlled everything food communication movement. She convinced me I was sick, that I deserved punishment, that no one would believe me. And she was right about that last part. 23 people reported concerns and no one believed them enough to act. So where exactly should I have gone? The lawyer had no response. As I left the witness stand, I passed Mother's table. For just a moment, our eyes met and I saw something flicker in hers. Not remorse, she wasn't capable of that, but perhaps finally the recognition that she'd lost control of the narrative forever. Tyler testified next, detailing the slow realization that our mother was a monster. He presented the insurance documents, the planning for my death, and his eventual targeting. His testimony was raw, angry in a way mine hadn't been. "She made me her accomplice," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Every time I didn't speak up, every time I ate dinner while Leah starved, I was helping her kill my sister. I'll carry that guilt forever." The trial lasted 2 weeks. Witness after witness painted a picture of systematic abuse hidden behind suburban respectability. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, aggravated child abuse, insurance fraud, conspiracy. The list went on each verdict, a vindication for Emma and validation for me. Mother stood stoically as the verdicts were read, but I saw her hands tremble. This wasn't part of her plan. In her delusion, she'd probably imagined being vindicated, proven right about her difficult daughters. During victim impact statements, I stood on legs now strong enough to hold me and spoke not just for myself, but for Emma. Grace Madison stole my childhood, my health, my sense of safety in the world. She killed my sister Emma and tried to kill me, but she failed. I'm alive, I'm healing, and I'm going to spend my life making sure no child suffers like we did. Emma can't speak for herself, so I'll speak for both of us. What happened to us was not love. It was not discipline. It was torture, and it ends here. Mother was sentenced to life without parole. Dad got 15 years for his role as enabler and conspirator. As they led Mother away, she turned to look at me one last time. Her lips moved, and I could read the words, "You'll understand someday." But I already understood. I understood that some people's version of love was indistinguishable from hate, that perfectionism could become a weapon, deadly as any gun, that the most dangerous predators sometimes called themselves mother. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions, but I walked past them to where James Morrison stood with a bouquet of white roses, Emma's favorite, he'd told me. "We did it," he said simply, "for Emma, for you, for all the children she'll never hurt again." I took one of the roses, breathing in its sweet scent. Somewhere I hoped Emma knew that justice had finally come, that her death had meaning, that her sister, the one she'd never met but had warned in hallucinations, had survived to tell both their stories. The fight for criminal justice was won, but the larger fight for systemic change, for awareness, for healing was just beginning, and I was finally strong enough to face it. The civil cases began 6 months after Mother's criminal conviction. By then I'd gained 40 pounds and started my senior year at a new high school, determined to reclaim the education she'd stolen. Jennifer Brooks had assembled a team of lawyers who specialized in institutional failures, and together they prepared to take on the systems that had failed to protect Emma and me. "This isn't about money," Jennifer explained at our strategy meeting. "It's about accountability, about forcing change so no other child falls through these cracks." The first lawsuit targeted the school district. We had documentation of 12 separate incidents where teachers or staff noted concerning weight loss, behavioral changes, or signs of abuse. Each time, Mother had provided explanations that were accepted without follow-up. During depositions, my former English teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, broke down crying. "I knew something was wrong," she admitted. "Sheila went from writing vibrant essays to barely turning in work. She lost so much weight so quickly." But when I reported it, the counselor said her mother was addressing the situation, and that was that. The school nurse, Patricia Vance, was more defensive. Mrs. Madison provided medical documentation about an eating disorder. "We're not equipped to challenge parents who seem to be seeking treatment for their children." "Even when the child is visibly starving," Jennifer pressed. "We followed protocol, and protocol nearly killed my client." The district eventually settled for $2 million and agreed to implement new training programs for recognizing medical child abuse. They also established a review board for cases where parents withdrew children for homeschooling under suspicious circumstances. Next came the case against Child Protective Services. This one was harder as government agencies had qualified immunity protections. But Jennifer found a loophole, gross negligence, that violated clearly established constitutional rights. We deposed the original social worker who'd responded to Mrs. Patterson's call. She'd been 24, fresh out of college, easily charmed by Mother's performance. "Mrs. Madison was so convincing," she said, reviewing her old case notes. "Professional, well-spoken, had all this documentation about Sheila's supposed behavioral issues. The house was immaculate. There was food in the refrigerator. Sheila herself said she was fine." "Did you notice she was underweight?" Jennifer asked. "She was thin, but lots of teenagers are thin, without other evidence of abuse." "What would you have done differently knowing what you know now?" The young woman, not so young anymore, considered carefully. "I would have insisted on a medical exam by a doctor not chosen by the parent. I would have interviewed Sheila separately away from the home. I would have followed up instead of closing the case after one visit." The CPS case revealed systemic problems, overworked caseworkers, insufficient training on psychological abuse, and a bias toward keeping families together that sometimes prioritized parental rights over child safety. The agency settled for $800,000 and committed to hiring additional workers and implementing new protocols for cases involving food restriction. Dr. Harold Brennan, the psychiatrist who'd never met me but provided documentation of my eating disorder, faced both civil and criminal charges. His license had already been suspended, but Jennifer wanted more. He gave medical cover to attempted murder, she argued in court. He sold legitimacy to an abuser for $5,000. Brennan's lawyer argued he'd been deceived by a convincing mother, but emails revealed he'd never even asked to examine me. He'd simply provided whatever documentation Mother requested in exchange for payment. I needed the money, he admitted under oath. My practice was struggling. She seemed like a concerned parent dealing with a troubled teen. I thought I was helping. By diagnosing a child you'd never met. It was wrong, I see that now. He was stripped of his license permanently and ordered to pay $500,000 in damages. Criminal charges resulted in 3 years probation and community service at a legitimate eating disorder clinic where he'd see actual patients recovering from the diseases he'd falsely diagnosed in me. The most emotionally difficult case was against my father. While he faced criminal charges, I also pursued civil action for his failure to protect me. This meant confronting not just his cowardice, but my own complicated feelings about the man who'd stood by while Mother tortured me. I don't want his money, I told Jennifer. I want him to publicly acknowledge what he did or didn't do. Dad's civil trial became a study in enablement. Expert witnesses testified about the psychology of passive abusers, those who participate through inaction. Dad took the stand looking decades older than his 50 years hands shaking as he held a prepared statement. I failed my daughter in every way a father can fail, he read. I chose comfort over truth, silence over action, my wife's approval over my child's life. I told myself Grace was strict but not abusive. I worked late to avoid seeing evidence that would force me to act. I drank to silence the voice telling me Shelia was dying. There is no forgiveness for what I've done. I can only hope my testimony helps other parents recognize their own cowardice before it costs a child's life. The court ordered him to pay damages from his share of marital assets, money that would fund my ongoing medical treatment. But more importantly, his public admission became part of the record, a warning to other enabling parents. The media coverage of the civil trials sparked national conversation about institutional failures in child protection. I testified before a state legislative committee considering new laws named after Emma and me. The Madison-Morrison Child Protection Act would require medical examinations by independent doctors when abuse was suspected, mandatory follow-up visits for all CPS cases involving weight loss, criminal penalties for medical professionals who provide false documentation, extended statute of limitations for survivors of child abuse to pursue civil remedies, funding for specialized training on medical child abuse. My sister Emma died because everyone gave our mother the benefit of the doubt, I told the legislators. I nearly died for the same reason. This law won't bring Emma back, but it might save the next Emma, the next Shelia. The law passed unanimously. Tyler joined me for some of the civil proceedings, his own lawsuit, focusing on the emotional abuse and planned future starvation he'd discovered in Mother's journals. His testimony revealed the long-term psychological damage of being the golden child in an abusive home. She made me complicit in torturing my sister, he said. Every privilege I received was built on Shelia's suffering. How do you recover from that? How do you forgive yourself for surviving when survival meant silence? His case settled quietly, funds going toward his therapy and education. But the real value was in his public stance against the mother who'd manipulated him into becoming her ally. The civil trials also revealed heroes we hadn't known about. A janitor at my school who'd repeatedly reported concerns only to be ignored. A grocery store clerk who'd noticed Mother buying food Tyler liked while denying me basics. A pediatrician who'd questioned Mother's doctor shopping and been threatened with a lawsuit for harassment. So many people tried to help, I told Jennifer after reading through the depositions. They just weren't heard. That's what we're changing, she assured me, making sure those voices can't be ignored anymore. The final civil case was against Mother's insurance company, which had issued policies on both Emma and me. Jennifer argued they should have seen the red flags a mother insuring children for amounts far exceeding normal coverage previous payouts for a child's death under suspicious circumstances. Insurance fraud resulting in child murder isn't a new scheme, Jennifer told the court. Companies have a responsibility to flag suspicious patterns. They failed that responsibility. The insurance company settled for an undisclosed amount and implemented new review procedures for policies on minors. It felt like a small victory, but every systemic change mattered. Throughout the legal battles, I lived with the Brennans, slowly reclaiming my life. I attended school, catching up on missed education. I made friends who knew my story but didn't define me by it. I learned to eat without fear, to sleep without checking for locks on doors, to exist without constant surveillance. The legal victories funded extensive medical treatment. Specialists worked to repair damage from prolonged starvation, weakened bones, damaged organs, hormonal imbalances that might affect my ability to have children someday. Each doctor's visit reminded me how close I'd come to joining Emma. "Your body is remarkably resilient," Dr. Martinez told me at a follow-up appointment. "But there's permanent damage. You'll need monitoring for life. Supplements, careful nutrition management, possible interventions as you age. Your mother stole more than your childhood. She stole decades of future health." The legal battles also brought unexpected connections. Other survivors reached out, sharing their stories of parents who'd weaponized love. We formed a support network, understanding each other in ways well-meaning therapists couldn't. One message particularly moved me. A woman named Claire wrote, "My mother did the same thing in the 80s. No one believed me. I survived barely, but spent decades thinking I was alone. Seeing you fight publicly, forcing accountability, you're healing more people than just yourself." The lawsuits concluded 2 years after they began. By then, I was in college studying social work with a focus on child advocacy. The settlement money meant I could afford any school, but I chose a state university with an excellent program in systemic reform. At the final press conference, Jennifer summarized what we'd achieved: $37 million in settlements, new laws protecting children, systemic reforms in education, child services and health care, public awareness that abuse doesn't always look like bruises and broken bones. Shelia Madison didn't just survive, she's ensured other children will too. But I knew the real victories weren't in dollar amounts or policy changes. They were in the emails from parents who'd recognized concerning patterns and intervened, in the teachers who'd pushed harder when something seemed wrong, in the children who'd found courage to speak up because they'd heard my story. Mother remained in prison unrepentant. She sent letters, occasionally dense missives about her persecution and my ingratitude. I had them forwarded to my lawyer unopened. Dad served his time quietly, sending his own letters of apology. I also didn't read. Some bridges were too thoroughly burned to rebuild. Tyler and I maintained a cautious relationship bound by shared trauma, but divided by our different roles in Mother's sick drama. He struggled more than I did in some ways, carrying guilt. I tried to tell him wasn't his to bear. "You were a child, too," I reminded him during one of our coffee meetings. "She manipulated us both. But I had food. I had privileges. I watched you disappear and did almost nothing. You saved my life with those granola bars, with that 911 call. That's not nothing." We were rebuilding ourselves and our sibling relationship from scratch without Mother's poison influence. It was slow work, but worthwhile. The legal battles had provided justice and systemic change. But healing, real healing, happened in smaller moments. In choosing what to eat for breakfast without fear. In sleeping through the night without nightmares. In trusting that love didn't have to hurt. Justice had been served. Now came the harder work of learning to live. The message arrived on a Tuesday evening while I was studying for my advanced child psychology midterm. The sender's name made me pause Lauren Mitchell with a subject line reading, "I was your mother's patient, 1999-2002. I almost deleted it. 2 years into college, I'd learned to filter the steady stream of messages from conspiracy theorists, true crime obsessives, and people who projected their own trauma onto my story. But something made me open this one. Dear Shelia, I've written and rewritten this message 100 times. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and your mother was my real estate agent when my family moved to Minnesota in 1999. I was 12. By 2002, I weighed 91 pounds, and my parents were convinced I had an eating disorder because that's what Grace Madison told them. I need you to know you saved my life. When your story broke, I finally understood what happened to me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making it up. Grace Madison systematically convinced my parents to starve me, and I've spent 20 years thinking it was my fault. If you're willing, I'd like to meet. I have documentation that might help other survivors. Lauren. I sat staring at the screen, my half-eaten dinner forgotten. Another victim. How many more were out there? I forwarded the email to Jennifer Brooks, who immediately took action. Within a week, she'd arranged a meeting at her office, a safe space where Lauren and I could share our parallel experiences. Lauren was 35 now, a successful pediatric nurse who dedicated her career to protecting children. But when she walked in, I saw the shadow of the 12-year-old girl Mother had targeted. "You look like Emma," she said quietly. Grace showed me pictures of her perfect daughter who died. Said I could be perfect too if I followed her guidance. Her story unfolded like a nightmare variation of my own. Mother had befriended Lauren's parents during their home search, identifying their insecurities about raising a daughter in a new city. She'd positioned herself as a mentor, a successful woman who'd raised a perfect child and could guide them. "It started with comments about my baby fat," Lauren explained. "How I'd have trouble making friends at a new school if I wasn't presentable. My parents were anxious about the move, wanting me to fit in. Grace offered to help with my transformation." The methods were chillingly familiar restricted meals disguised as healthy eating exercise regimens that bordered on torture, constant weigh-ins with Mother supervising. But the crucial difference was that Lauren's parents were unwitting accomplices, not enablers like Dad. She convinced them I was sneaking food, lying about exercise, manipulating them. She'd point out behaviors that were completely normal, like being tired after school, as signs of my disorder. They trusted her completely. Lauren had documentation emails from Mother with detailed meal plans, exercise schedules, and psychological manipulation disguised as advice. Photos showing her weight loss progression. Medical records from doctors Mother had recommended who'd confirmed the eating disorder diagnosis without proper examination. The breaking point came when I fainted at school. Lauren continued. A different doctor, one Grace hadn't recommended, ran comprehensive tests. He found evidence of systematic starvation and threatened to call CPS. My parents were horrified when they realized what they'd been doing to me. What happened then? We moved again, left Minnesota immediately. My parents were terrified of being arrested, of losing me. We never spoke about it again. They convinced themselves it had been a misunderstanding, that they'd just been overzealous about healthy eating. But I knew the truth. Grace Madison had tried to kill me, and she'd used my own parents as weapons. Jennifer had been taking notes throughout. "Lauren, would you be willing to go public with this? It establishes a pattern beyond Emma and Sheila. Shows this was her method for decades." Lauren nodded firmly. "I've been silent for 20 years. When I saw Sheila on the news testifying so bravely, I knew I couldn't hide anymore." Her revelation opened floodgates. Jennifer set up a secure email address for potential victims, and within a month we'd heard from 17 other families. Not all were as severe as Lauren's case. Some had recognized Mother's manipulation early and cut ties. But the pattern was consistent. Mother identifying vulnerable families, positioning herself as an expert, systematically destroying children's relationships with food and their own bodies. One case stood out. Maria Gonzalez had been 8 when her family bought a house from Mother in 2005. Too young to be a primary target, but Mother had planted seeds. "She told my mom I was getting chunky," Maria wrote. "Said American food was making me fat and I'd be bullied in school. She gave my mom diet plans for an 8-year-old. My mom followed them for a few weeks before my dad found out and went ballistic. He threatened to report Grace to her real estate company. We never heard from her again." Maria's father had kept the diet plans, horrifying documents prescribing fewer than 800 calories a day for a growing child. He'd also recorded a voicemail where Mother warned about the dangers of letting children become undisciplined with food. Tyler joined me for some of these meetings with survivors. He'd initially resisted, not wanting to hear more evidence of Mother's evil, but eventually realized he needed to understand the full scope to heal. She had a type, he said after meeting Lauren. Girls who looked like Emma, families new to the area, parents who were insecure. I wasn't her biological son, I was bait. The perfect child to show what her methods could achieve. The survivors formed an informal support group. We met monthly, sometimes in person, sometimes virtually. Ages ranged from 21 to 42, but our experiences were eerily similar. Mother had refined her approach over decades, learning from each attempt. Dr. Patricia Wong, a psychiatrist specializing in institutional abuse, joined our group as an advisor. What Grace Madison did was essentially create a cult of one, she explained. She positioned herself as the sole authority on child-rearing isolated families from other perspectives and used sophisticated psychological manipulation to maintain control. The media attention from Lauren's story led to more revelations. Former neighbors from Mother's various addresses came forward with observations they'd dismissed at the time. Real estate colleagues recalled her fixation on clients' children, her unsolicited advice about parenting. One former co-worker, Janet Price, provided crucial insight. Grace was obsessed with this book from the 70s about training children through food control. She'd quote from it, constantly said modern parents were too soft. When her daughter Emma died, she blamed everyone but herself, said society had undermined her methods. We tracked down the book, Perfection Through Discipline, A Parent's Guide to Raising Exceptional Children, by Dr. Richard Hawthorne, published in 1973. It advocated extreme measures, including starvation as correction, isolation as reflection time, and complete parental control over every aspect of a child's life. Jennifer's research revealed Dr. Hawthorne had lost his license in 1981 after 3 children died following his methods. But his book had gone underground, passed between like-minded parents who believed in breaking children's spirits to rebuild them. This gives us context for Grace's delusions, Jennifer explained. She wasn't operating in a vacuum. She was part of a hidden network of abusers who validated each other's methods. The survivor group decided to take action beyond our own healing. We established the Emma Morrison Foundation, named for Mother's first victim, who'd had no advocates. The foundation would provide resources for families escaping child abuse training, for professionals to recognize signs, and lobbying for stronger protection laws. Lauren spearheaded the foundation's first major initiative, a documentary about hidden child abuse in perfect families. She interviewed survivors, experts, and remarkably some of Mother's former enablers who'd come to recognize their complicity. One interview particularly struck me. Mrs. Davidson had been in Mother's social circle at church, had attended those dinner parties where I'd served food I couldn't eat. I knew something was wrong, she admitted to the camera. Sheila got thinner every time I saw her, but Grace was so convincing. She'd cry about how hard it was to have a daughter with an eating disorder, how she was doing everything possible to help. We prayed for her. We supported her. We enabled a monster because it was easier than asking hard questions. The documentary premiered at a film festival focused on social justice. Watching our stories on screen, seeing the pattern of Mother's predation laid out clearly, was both painful and empowering. The audience's shocked silence during the worst revelations validated what we'd experienced. During the Q&A afterward, someone asked how we found the strength to forgive. Lauren answered first. I don't forgive Grace Madison. Forgiveness requires repentance, and she's shown none. But I've forgiven my parents who were victims too. I've forgiven the community that failed to see, and I've forgiven 12-year-old me for not being able to save herself. Tyler surprised me by speaking up. I haven't forgiven myself yet. I was her accomplice even if I didn't understand it. But working with the foundation, trying to prevent this from happening to other families, maybe that's how I'll earn forgiveness. Not from others, but from myself. The foundation grew rapidly. Survivors from around the country reached out sharing stories of parents who'd weaponized food love and control. We partnered with hospitals to provide specialized treatment for victims of medical child abuse. We funded research into the psychology of parents who torture their children while believing themselves righteous. One of our most successful programs placed survivors as consultants in CPS offices. Who better to recognize the signs than those who'd lived them? Lauren developed training materials that helped social workers see past charming facades to the damage underneath. The biggest misconception, she explained during one training session, is that abusive parents look like monsters. Grace Madison sold houses to happy families. She volunteered at church. She hosted dinner parties. She also systematically tortured multiple children over 3 decades. These aren't contradictions. The public persona is part of the abuse pattern. The foundation also supported research into what we called intergenerational institutional abuse, how people like Mother learned their methods, passed them on, and found validation in hidden communities. Dr. Wong's research revealed networks of parents sharing techniques for breaking children's spirits, circumventing protective systems, and maintaining plausible deniability. It's not unlike how other predators operate, she explained. They share strategies, validate each other's actions, and create philosophical frameworks to justify torture. The difference is, these predators have natural access to victims, their own children. 3 years after that first email from Lauren, the Emma Morrison Foundation had chapters in 12 states. We'd helped pass legislation requiring independent medical verification when parents claimed eating disorders. We'd funded treatment for hundreds of survivors. We'd changed the conversation about what child abuse could look like. At our annual gala, I stood before an audience of survivors, advocates, and allies. Behind me, a photo of Emma Morrison smiled, the happy toddler, before Mother's improvements began. Emma never got justice in life, I said. But her death wasn't meaningless. Every child we protect, every survivor we help heal, every predator we expose, that's Emma's legacy. That's all of our legacies. Lauren stood beside me, along with Tyler and a dozen other survivors who'd found strength in shared truth. We were Mother's victims, but we refused to remain so. We'd transformed our pain into power, our isolation into community, our silence into a roar that could no longer be ignored. Mother remained in prison unrepentant, but her true punishment wasn't the cell, it was watching her victims thrive, unite, and systematically dismantle everything that had allowed her to operate. We were her failed experiments who'd not only survived, but flourished. And we were making sure there would never be another Grace Madison again. The courtroom was packed for Mother's final appeal hearing. 3 years into her life sentence, she'd exhausted most legal avenues, but clung to the delusion that some judge somewhere would recognize her persecution. I sat in the gallery between Jennifer and James Morrison, watching the woman who'd tried to kill me argue for her freedom. Mother had aged dramatically in prison. Without her careful styling and expensive treatments, she looked like what she was, a bitter woman consumed by her own poison. Her court-appointed attorney, Janet Blackwood, had long since abandoned the case, presented the appeal with visible reluctance. My client maintains that she was acting in her children's best interests based on legitimate parenting philosophies. He droned. She requests the court consider her previously unblemished record and contributions to the community. The prosecutor, Anna Chen, Dr. Sarah Chen's other sister as it happened, stood with barely contained fury. Grace Madison's unblemished record includes the murder of Emma Morrison and the attempted murder of Shelia Madison. Her contributions to the community were a carefully constructed facade to hide systematic torture. The jury's decision was clear, and nothing in this appeal changes the fundamental facts. But the hearing's true drama came when the judge allowed victim impact statements addressing the appeal. I hadn't planned to speak what more was there to say, but when James Morrison took the stand, something shifted. "Your Honor," he began, voice steady despite the tears on his cheeks. "Grace Madison stole my daughter from me twice, first by poisoning her against me, then by killing her. For 17 years, I've lived with the knowledge that I failed to save Emma. This woman shows no remorse, accepts no responsibility. She believes she's a martyr. The only thing preventing her from killing again is these prison walls. Please don't let Emma's death be for nothing." Mother watched him with cold eyes, unmoved by the father's grief she'd caused. That's when I knew I had to speak. "Your Honor," I said, standing on legs that no longer shook. "Grace Madison isn't appealing because she believes she's innocent. She's appealing because she can't accept that she lost control. For my entire life, she maintained absolute power over every aspect of my existence. This appeal isn't about justice, it's about her pathological need to control the narrative." I looked directly at Mother, then seeing not the monster of my nightmares, but a pathetic woman clinging to delusions. "You failed," I told her. "You tried to erase Emma, and James Morrison kept her memory alive. You tried to erase me, and I survived to expose you. You tried to create perfect daughters through starvation and torture, and instead you created survivors who've dedicated their lives to stopping people like you. Your legacy isn't perfection, it's protection for every child who might have suffered as we did." Mother's composure finally cracked. "You ungrateful brat!" she screamed, lunging forward before guards restrained her. "I gave you everything I tried to save you from yourself. You were broken, defective, just like Emma. I was fixing you." The judge gavelled for order, but Mother continued ranting. "They all said Emma was perfect after she died, but they didn't see the truth. She was willful, disobedient, contaminated by her father's weakness. I had to purify her, had to burn away the flaws, and Sheila was the same. Infected with lies and laziness, I was creating perfection." "That's enough," the judge commanded. "Mrs. Madison, you've just demonstrated exactly why your appeal is denied. Your complete lack of remorse, your continued delusions about your crimes, and your obvious danger to society confirm the jury's wisdom. Life without parole stands. This court is adjourned." As guards dragged Mother away, still screaming about ungrateful children and a world too blind to see her vision, I felt something I hadn't expected: closure. Not because she was returning to prison, but because she'd finally shown everyone what I'd always seen: the rage beneath the perfect mother mask. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with familiar questions. But before I could speak, other voices joined mine. Lauren Mitchell, Maria Gonzalez, and 7 other survivors who'd traveled to witness the appeal's denial. "Grace Madison isn't unique," Lauren told the cameras. "She's part of a hidden epidemic of parents who torture their children while calling it love. Today's justice isn't just for Emma and Sheila, it's for all of us who survived, and for those still trapped in homes where love is a weapon." The appeal's denial marked a turning point. Media attention renewed focus on our cause, leading to what became known as Grace's Law, at the federal level comprehensive legislation, protecting children from medical abuse, food restriction as punishment, and systematic torture disguised as parenting. The law's passage brought unexpected allies. Senator Patricia Williams, no relation to the pastor's family, had her own history with an abusive mother. She championed our cause in Congress, sharing her story publicly for the first time. "I was the Attorney General's daughter," she testified. "No one believed a successful lawyer would starve his child. It took a suicide attempt at 15 before anyone listened. Grace's Law would have saved me years of torture." The signing ceremony took place at the White House. President Harrison invited survivors' advocates and the families who'd fought for change. Tyler and I stood with James Morrison as the president signed legislation that would fundamentally change how America protected its children. "No child should suffer in silence," the president said. "No parent should weaponize love, and no system should enable torture through inaction. Grace's Law ensures that Emma Morrison and children like her will never be forgotten or failed again." But justice came in forms beyond legislation. Dad's parole hearing arrived 2 years into his sentence. He'd been a model prisoner, leading addiction recovery groups and volunteering for literacy programs. The parole board asked if I wanted to provide input. I struggled with the decision for weeks. Dad's cowardice had nearly killed me, but unlike Mother, he'd shown genuine remorse. His letters, which I'd finally started reading, revealed a man destroyed by his choices, committed to making whatever amends were possible. Finally, I submitted a written statement. Robert Madison failed catastrophically as a father. His weakness enabled torture. His silence facilitated attempted murder. But unlike Grace Madison, he's accepted responsibility. He's shown genuine change. I don't forgive him, that's not mine to give. But I don't oppose his parole. Let him spend his remaining years trying to become the man he should have been. Dad was released on strict conditions, including no contact with me unless I initiated it. He moved to a small apartment in Wisconsin, working as a bookkeeper for a nonprofit serving abuse survivors. Jennifer had arranged it, believing in redemption, even for enablers who showed true change. 6 months later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a note from the sale of the house. This doesn't fix anything, but it belongs to you. Use it to help others. I'm sorry. R. I donated it to the Emma Morrison Foundation. Tyler graduated from medical school inspired by the doctors who'd saved me. He specialized in pediatric medicine with a focus on recognizing abuse. His thesis on medical professionals as first responders to child torture became required reading in several programs. I can't undo my silence, he told me at his graduation, but I can make sure other kids have the advocate I failed to be. Our relationship remained complicated but genuine. We'd never have a normal sibling bond, too much damage, too much shared trauma. But we'd built something real from the ashes of our childhood. The justice system delivered one final vindication. Dr. Harold Brennan, the psychiatrist who'd falsified my diagnosis, faced additional charges when investigators found he'd done the same for 12 other children, whose parents paid for documentation supporting abuse. His trial revealed a network of medical professionals who sold legitimacy to abusers. I thought I was helping parents deal with difficult children, he claimed in his defense. You never met these children, the prosecutor countered. You sold torture insurance for $5,000 per diagnosis. You gave predators medical cover to destroy lives. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to all victims. His case led to stricter oversight of psychiatric diagnoses for minors and mandatory reporting when parents sought multiple opinions without clear cause. But perhaps the most meaningful justice came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who'd first called CPS, established a scholarship in Emma and my names at the local high school. The award went to students who showed courage in standing up for others, even when systems failed to support them. I should have done more, she said at the first award ceremony. I let politeness and procedure override my instincts. These scholarships are my apology and my promise never again will I stay silent when a child needs help. The first recipient was a sophomore who'd reported her best friend's abuse despite threats from the friend's parents. She stood at the podium holding the award with trembling hands and thanked me for showing that survival was possible. Shelia Madison proved that our stories matter, she said, that speaking truth even when no one wants to hear it can save lives. This scholarship isn't just money for college, it's validation that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard. As the years passed, justice rippled outward. The foundation grew, laws strengthened, awareness spread. Other countries studied Grace's law as a model for protecting children from systematic abuse. Medical schools added mandatory training on recognizing torture disguised as parenting. Social workers received better resources and support when challenging affluent abusers. Mother remained in prison, increasingly isolated, as her delusions alienated even fellow inmates. Reports filtered back that she'd started a hunger strike, claiming the prison food was contaminated and she needed to purify herself. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. She'd weaponized starvation against her daughters, and now it had turned on her. She lasted 2 weeks before medical intervention was required. Forced feeding the thing she'd denied her children kept her alive against her will. The woman who'd claimed absolute control over food and bodies found herself powerless subject to others' decisions about her survival. "There's poetic justice in it," James Morrison observed during one of our regular lunches. We'd become close over the years, united by our shared loss and determination to find meaning in Emma's death. She thought starvation was power. Now she's learning it's just slow suicide. Mother survived her hunger strike but emerged diminished. Photos from a recent court hearing showed a skeletal figure, her body reflecting the torture she'd inflicted. She'd achieved the thinness she'd forced on Emma and me, and it had brought her nothing but weakness. The final legal victory came when the insurance company that had paid out on Emma's death was forced to establish a fund for abuse survivors. $500,000, the amount they'd paid Mother for murdering her daughter, became seed money for therapy programs specifically designed for victims of parental torture. "It's blood money," I said at the press conference announcing the fund, "paid for a child's death, but we're transforming it into healing for other children." Emma's life had value beyond the price Mother put on it. This fund ensures her death keeps saving lives. Standing at that podium, healthy and strong at 99 pounds, my body's natural weight when properly nourished, I thought about justice. It wasn't just about punishment, though Mother would die in prison. It wasn't just about restitution, though survivors had resources now. Justice was Tyler saving lives as a doctor who recognized abuse. It was Lauren training social workers to see past perfect facades. It was laws protecting children in every state. It was survivors sharing their stories without shame. It was systems changing awareness, spreading children surviving because we'd refused to let our pain be meaningless. Justice was me alive and thriving proof that Mother's vision of perfection through destruction had failed completely. Every healthy meal I ate, every choice I made freely, every child the foundation helped, all of it was justice served daily in small acts of defiance against those who would weaponize love. Mother had tried to erase Emma and me. Instead, she'd created an army of advocates ensuring no child would suffer as we had. That was justice, her victims becoming her undoing her legacy, transformed from torture to protection. And somewhere I hoped Emma knew that justice had finally come, not just in verdicts and sentences, but in lives saved, children protected, and survivors who refused to let our stories end with our abuse. We were the justice Grace Madison never saw, coming her experiments in perfection who'd become perfectly, beautifully, defiantly human. The therapist's office smelled like vanilla candles and had too many throw pillows, but Dr. Amelia Foster had come highly recommended for treating severe trauma. 5 years after leaving the hospital, I'd finally admitted that gaining weight wasn't the same as healing. "Recovery isn't linear," she said during our first session, her voice gentle but direct. "You've done incredible work advocating for others, but when did you last advocate for yourself?" The question hit harder than any of Mother's slaps. I'd thrown myself into the foundation, into legal battles, into saving everyone but myself. It was easier to fight for others than to face the damage within. "I don't know how to just be," I admitted. "Without a crisis to solve or a child to save, I don't know who Shelia is." "Then let's find out," Dr. Foster suggested, "starting with small things. What do you enjoy that has nothing to do with your trauma?" The question seemed impossible. Everything in my life connected back to those years of starvation. Even my career in social work felt like penance for surviving when Emma hadn't. But Dr. Foster persisted, and slowly, tentatively, I began exploring life beyond survival. I started with pottery classes at the community center. There was something healing about creating with my hands, shaping clay into bowls and vases that served no purpose except beauty. My first attempts were lopsided disasters, but the teacher, an elderly woman named Ruth, just smiled. "Perfection is overrated," she said, admiring my crooked bowl. "The Japanese have a practice called wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection. Your bowl has character." I cried in my car after that class, overwhelmed by the radical idea that imperfection could be beautiful. Music came next. I'd always loved singing, but Mother had forbidden it. Unseemly noise, she'd called it. Now I joined a community choir, my voice rusty but eager. We performed at nursing homes and hospitals, bringing joy to people who needed it. The conductor never criticized my mistakes, only encouraged me to sing louder. "Don't hide that voice," he said. "It's meant to be heard." Tyler noticed the changes when we met for our monthly coffee. Our relationship had evolved from traumatized siblings to cautious friends built on shared understanding and careful boundaries. "You look different," he observed. "Not physically, something else." "I'm trying to find out who I am when I'm not fighting," I explained. "Dr. Foster says I've been in survival mode so long I don't know how to just live." He nodded slowly. "I get that. Sometimes at the hospital between patients I catch myself waiting for catastrophe, like calm moments are just the setup for disaster." "Hypervigilance," I said. "Apparently it's common in abuse survivors. We're always braced for the next attack even when we're safe." We talked about our parallel healing journeys. Tyler had started dating a fellow doctor who understood his background without defining him by it. He was learning to accept love without fearing it would turn to control. "She wants to meet you," he said hesitantly, "but only if you're comfortable. I know family stuff is complicated for us." "I'd like that," I surprised myself by saying. "Maybe we can create a new kind of family, one we choose." Dating remained my biggest challenge. How did you explain to someone that your mother had tried to murder you through starvation? When was the right time to mention the feeding tube scars or the fact that certain words, discipline, correction to perfect, sent you into panic attacks? My first attempts were disasters. Men who fetishized my trauma wanting to save the broken girl, others who ran the moment things got complicated. One memorable date ended when he complained about his crazy mother who called too often, and I excused myself to hyperventilate in the bathroom. But then I met Marcus at a foundation fundraiser. He was a pediatric nurse who'd heard my story but was more interested in my pottery and singing. Our first date was at a farmer's market where he didn't comment when I spent 20 minutes choosing apples, overwhelmed by the abundance and freedom of choice. "Take your time," he said simply. "Apples are important decisions." He understood without making understanding his entire personality. When I had bad days, anniversaries of Emma's death or Mother's arrest, he gave me space while making sure I knew he was available. When I had good days, he celebrated without making them seem like miraculous exceptions. "You're not a project to fix," he told me 6 months into our relationship. "You're a person to love, all of you, including the parts that are still healing." Physical recovery remained ongoing. The years of starvation had left permanent marks, brittle bones requiring careful monitoring, digestive issues that flared unpredictably, hormonal imbalances affecting fertility. Dr. Chen remained my nutritionist, helping me navigate the complex relationship between nourishment and health. "Your body remembers the trauma," she explained during a checkup. "It may always be protective of resources quick to store fat resistant to letting go. That's not failure, it's survival. Your body saved you by adapting to impossible circumstances." I learned to appreciate my body's resilience rather than resent its limitations. The stretch marks from rapid weight restoration became battle scars. The supplement routine that would last a lifetime became a daily act of self-care. The foods that still sometimes triggered anxiety became opportunities to practice courage. College graduation arrived with unexpected emotions. I'd missed so much school during Mother's imprisonment, but I'd caught up and excelled. Standing in cap and gown, I thought about 16-year-old me, locked in that room, certain I'd die without ever experiencing this moment. James Morrison attended representing Emma, who never got her chance. The Brennans came my foster parents who'd shown me that homes could be safe. Mrs. Williams was there, dabbing tears and taking too many photos. Even Mrs. Patterson made it 93 years old and still fierce about protecting children. "You did it," Linda Brennan whispered, hugging me after the ceremony. "Despite everything, you did it." My valedictorian speech focused on resilience and redemption. I spoke about systems that failed and communities that stepped up, about survival being just the first step in a longer journey toward thriving, about imperfection being not a flaw to fix, but a truth to embrace. My mother tried to create perfection through destruction, I concluded. She failed because perfection isn't achievable or even desirable. What matters is persistence, community, and the courage to keep becoming whoever we're meant to be. The foundation work continued, but with better boundaries. I hired additional staff, recognizing that martyring myself for the cause served no one. We expanded programs while I carved out time for pottery, singing Dating Marcus, and simply existing without purpose or productivity. Lauren took over daily operations, her business acumen and personal experience making her ideal for the role. "You've been in crisis mode since birth," she told me firmly. "It's time to learn what peace feels like." Peace felt like Sunday mornings making pancakes with Marcus, like pottery class where my bowls remained crooked but increasingly confident, like choir practice where my voice joined others in harmony, like therapy where I processed childhood trauma without letting it define my adulthood. The nightmares decreased but never fully disappeared. Some nights I still woke, gasping, convinced I was locked in that room. Marcus learned to wait for me to orient myself, offering water and presence without overwhelming me with questions. "You're safe," he'd whisper. "You're here. You survived." Tyler got married 2 years later. His bride Sarah was everything he needed, strong enough to handle his history, gentle enough to help him heal. I served as a groomsman. Gender conventions seemed silly, given everything we'd survived, standing beside my brother as he promised to love and protect someone who chose him freely. During his vows, Tyler said, "I learned young that love could be a weapon. Sarah taught me it could be healing instead. I promised to always choose the healing kind." At the reception, we danced to "Lean on Me," and I realized we'd become the siblings we'd never been allowed to be as children. Not perfect, but present. Not unmarked by trauma, but not destroyed by it either. Recovery meant learning to mother myself with the kindness Grace Madison never showed. It meant feeding myself when hungry, resting when tired, playing when joyful. It meant setting boundaries with well-meaning people who wanted to hear gory details of my abuse. It meant choosing what to share and what to keep private. "Healing isn't performing recovery for others," Dr. Foster reminded me. "It's the quiet work you do when no one's watching, the meals you eat alone, the baths you take for pleasure, the books you read for joy, not education, the life you build beyond survival." That life included simple pleasures Mother would have forbidden: ice cream on hot days, lazy Saturday mornings, dancing badly to favorite songs, friendships based on shared interests, not shared trauma, a garden where I grew vegetables I chose to eat, not because they were allowed, but because they tasted good. The 10th anniversary of my rescue approached with media requests for retrospectives. I declined most, choosing instead to mark the day quietly. Marcus and I hiked to a waterfall outside the city, carrying a picnic lunch I'd packed myself. We ate sandwiches and chips and cookies without counting calories or seeking permission. 10 years ago, I was dying. I told him as we watched water cascade over rocks. Today I'm living, not just surviving, actually living. That's the only anniversary that matters. He kissed my forehead, understanding that some victories were too profound for words. That evening, I attended a foundation support group for teen survivors. They looked at me with awe I tried to deflect, but their hunger for hope was palpable. "Does it get easier?" a 15-year-old asked. She'd been rescued from parents who'd locked her in a basement for 2 years. "Different," I answered honestly. "The trauma doesn't disappear, but it stops being the only thing. You learn to carry it without letting it carry you away. You build a life bigger than what was done to you." After the meeting, I drove past the house where it all happened. New owners had painted it blue, added a garden, transformed it into something unrecognizable. The locks were gone, the cameras removed. Children played in the yard where I'd collapsed weeding. I didn't stop, didn't need to. That house held no power over me anymore. It was just walls and memories, and I'd built better of both. At home, Marcus had made dinner salmon with roasted vegetables my favorite. We ate on the porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. Afterward, I called Tyler to check and exchange texts with Lauren about foundation business, sent James Morrison photos from my latest pottery success. Before bed, I stood before the bathroom mirror, seeing not the skeleton Mother tried to create, but the woman I'd chosen to become, imperfect, scarred, but whole. Alive not despite my history, but because I'd survived it and refused to let it define my future. I made it, I whispered to my reflection, to Emma's memory, to the girl I'd been at 16. We made it. Recovery wasn't a destination, but a daily choice. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, therapy appointments, triggering moments, the ongoing work of healing. But tonight, I was safe in a home, without locks. Loved by people who nourished rather than starved, free to be imperfect and human and wonderfully alive. That was more than recovery. That was redemption, and it was enough. 5 years later, I stood at a podium in the Capitol building, my hands steady as I adjusted the microphone. The room was packed with legislators, advocates, and survivors for the 10th anniversary celebration of Grace's Law. Behind me hung a portrait of Emma Morrison, forever 15, the girl whose death had ultimately saved so many lives. 10 years ago, I began my voice carrying the authority of lived experience. A woman named Grace Madison was sentenced to life in prison for trying to murder me, the same way she'd successfully murdered my sister Emma. Today we celebrate not her imprisonment, but the transformation her crime sparked. Because of Emma, because of all of us who survived, thousands of children have been saved from similar fates. The statistics were staggering. Grace's Law had led to the identification and rescue of over 12,000 children from severe abuse situations. Training programs had educated 50,000 professionals in recognizing medical child abuse. The Emma Morrison Foundation had provided treatment for 3,000 survivors and counting. But numbers couldn't capture the individual lives transformed. Like Melissa sitting in the third row who'd been rescued from parents, inspired by the same toxic parenting book Mother had followed. Or David, whose teacher recognized the signs because of our mandatory training videos. Or the twins in foster care who'd nearly died before a pediatrician remembered Emma's story and pushed past parental explanations. We've built something beautiful from unimaginable pain, I continued. Not because trauma makes us stronger, that's a dangerous myth, but because we refuse to let our pain be meaningless. We chose to transform it into protection for others. Marcus sat in the front row, our 3-year-old daughter Hope balanced on his lap. The pregnancy had been high risk due to my body's lasting damage, but she'd arrived healthy and fierce, with Marcus's calm eyes and my stubborn chin. Watching Mother try to destroy children had made me hesitant about motherhood, but therapy and time had separated her toxicity from my own capacity to nurture. Hope waved at me from the audience, and I waved back, my heart full. This was what Mother never understood, that love multiplied rather than diminished, that feeding my child, comforting her cries, celebrating her imperfections made me more, not less. After the ceremony, survivors and supporters mingled in the reception hall. Tyler worked the room with his wife Sarah and their infant son James, named for the man who'd fought 17 years for justice. My brother had become one of the country's leading experts on identifying child abuse in medical settings, his personal history lending weight to his professional expertise. Little James is getting hungry, Sarah mentioned, and without hesitation, Tyler produced a bottle from the diaper bag. The ease with which he fed his son, the joy in nourishing rather than restricting, showed how thoroughly he'd broken Mother's poisonous patterns. Lauren approached with news about the Foundation's latest initiative. "We've got approval for the Residential Treatment Center," she announced. 50 beds for children recovering from severe abuse, staffed by trauma specialists and survivors who've completed our counseling program. "Where?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "Duluth, where Emma died. We're calling it Emma's house." Tears pricked my eyes. Emma would have a legacy beyond her death certificate, a place where children could heal from the kind of torture she'd endured alone. James Morrison overheard and joined our circle, now in his 70s, but still sharp with purpose. "She would have loved this," he said simply. "My little girl saving other little girls and boys. It's perfect." The reception buzzed with conversations about progress and next steps. Senator Williams discussed federal funding for abuse prevention programs. Dr. Wong presented research on breaking generational cycles of abuse. Mrs. Williams, now in her 80s but still formidable, coordinated with church leaders about sanctuary programs for children in crisis. Amid the policy discussions and professional networking, I noticed a young woman standing alone by the memorial wall, photos of children who died from abuse, whose stories had shaped our movement. She looked barely 20 thin in a way that spoke of recent trauma rather than choice. I approached carefully, recognizing the hypervigilance in how she tracked every movement in the room. First time at one of these events, she nodded, arms wrapped protectively around herself. "My caseworker said it might help. My parents were convicted 6 months ago. They had your mother's journals. They were following her methods." My blood chilled, but I kept my voice warm. "I'm so sorry. How are you doing now?" "Surviving," she said, then caught herself. "No, that's not right anymore. I'm supposed to say thriving, right? That's what survivors do." "Survivors do whatever they need to do," I corrected gently. "Some days that's thriving, some days it's just breathing. Both are valid." We talked for an hour. Her name was Rebecca, and her story echoed mine in painful ways: the systematic starvation, the gaslighting, the community that looked away, but also the teacher who finally reported the prosecutor who believed her, the foster family teaching her that food wasn't conditional on perfection. "Does it really get better?" she asked the question every survivor voiced eventually. I thought about my morning hope chattering over breakfast, Marcus singing in the shower, the easy rhythm of a life built on safety and choice, the therapy appointments that had moved from crisis management to maintenance, the meals I ate without fear or guilt, the foundation work that fulfilled rather than consumed me. Yes, I told her honestly, not perfect, not without challenges, but immeasurably better. You'll build a life that belongs to you, not to what was done to you. As the reception wound down, Senator Williams announced the Grace's Law Enhancement Act, which would extend protections and increase funding for prevention programs. The room erupted in applause, but I found myself thinking about Mother in her prison cell. Reports from correctional staff said she'd become increasingly delusional, writing manifestos about parenting that no one read, preaching to an audience of guards who'd heard it all before. She'd never expressed remorse, never acknowledged the harm she'd caused. In her mind, she remained the martyred mother persecuted for loving too much. Part of me pitied her, a woman so broken she'd convinced herself torture was love. But mostly, I felt grateful for the bars between us and the laws ensuring no other Grace Madison could operate with such impunity. The event ended with a candlelight vigil for children we'd failed to save. Emma's photo appeared on the memorial screen alongside hundreds of others. We stood in silence, flames flickering in the darkness, remembering those whose deaths had forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about parents who killed with kindness control and carefully measured cruelty. "We see you," I whispered to their images. "We remember. We'll keep fighting." Later at home, I tucked Hope into bed, marveling at the simple pleasure of reading her a story, kissing her forehead, ensuring she fell asleep, fed and loved and safe. Marcus found me standing in her doorway, watching her sleep. "You okay?" he asked, knowing anniversaries and events like today's stirred complicated emotions. "Just grateful," I said. "For her, for you, for all of it. For the chance to be the mother I never had." We settled onto the couch where I'd left my laptop open to emails from survivors worldwide. Messages of gratitude, requests for help, updates on their own healing journeys. The movement we'd started had grown beyond anything we'd imagined, touching lives across continents. One email stood out from a prosecutor in Germany using our model to build cases against abusive parents. Another from Japan, where Grace's law had inspired similar legislation. A researcher in Australia studying our foundation's treatment protocols. The ripples of our pain had become waves of change. "You did this," Marcus said, reading over my shoulder. "We did this," I corrected. "All of us. Every survivor who spoke up, every professional who listened, every legislator who acted. Even Mother in her twisted way by being so egregious she couldn't be ignored anymore." My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Turn on Channel 9. The news showed footage from the Capitol event focusing on the bipartisan support for enhancing Grace's law. But what caught my attention was the interview with a young social worker who'd attended. "Sheila Madison saved my life when I was 14, she said. "My parents were starving me and everyone believed their lies until my teacher saw a news story about Grace Madison. She recognized the patterns and reported it. Now I'm dedicated to paying that forward to being the advocate I needed." I didn't recognize her, had never met her personally, but her story was one of thousands made possible by our refusal to stay silent. Each saved child created more advocates, more professionals trained to see through perfect facades to the suffering beneath. "Come to bed," Marcus suggested gently. "Tomorrow's a full day." He was right. Tomorrow brought therapy appointments, foundation meetings, and Hope's playdate. Next week included testimony before Congress about expanding federal protections. The work never truly ended, but I'd learned to balance advocacy with life impact with intimacy. Before sleeping, I performed my nightly ritual, checking the locks, unlocked the refrigerator accessible, the windows open for fresh air, habits born from trauma, but transformed into affirmations of freedom. In bed, Marcus curled around me, his presence a reminder that bodies could be sources of comfort rather than control. I thought about 16-year-old me dying in that locked room, certain I'd never experience love or safety, or the simple pleasure of choosing when and what to eat. "I love you," I whispered into the darkness to Marcus, to Hope, to the life we'd built. "Love you too," he murmured back. As sleep approached, I had one last thought for the universe, for Emma, for all the survivors still fighting their way free. We made it. Despite everything, the starvation, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of our sense of self, we survived. More than survived. We thrived, loved, created, protected. We transformed torture into testimony, pain into purpose, isolation into community. Mother had tried to erase us, to reduce us to nothing, and rebuild us in her twisted image. Instead, we'd rebuilt ourselves and changed the world in the process. Every law passed, every child saved, every survivor who found their voice, all of it proof that love was stronger than control. That truth outlasted lies, that the human spirit could endure unimaginable cruelty and still choose kindness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would always be more children to save, more systems to reform, more survivors to support. The work of undoing generations of hidden abuse couldn't be completed in one lifetime. But tonight, in a house without locks, with a refrigerator I could open freely, and a family who nourished my body and soul, I rested. Not because the fight was over, but because I'd learned that warriors needed peace too, that survival included softness, that the greatest rebellion against those who'd tried to break us was simply beautifully ordinarily living. Emma couldn't speak for herself, but her story spoke volumes. My scars bore witness to what had been done, but my life testified to what was possible. And somewhere in the space between memory and hope, between justice and healing, between the children we'd been and the adults we'd become, there was room for all of us, imperfect, resilient, and free. The end was really just the beginning, and that perhaps was the greatest victory of all. Thank you for joining me on Shelia's journey from suffering to survival to purpose. If you or someone you know has experienced abuse, please know that help exists and healing is possible. Your story matters, your pain is valid, and you deserve safety and love. Have you witnessed signs of abuse that were dismissed or overlooked? How can we better protect vulnerable children in our communities? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please consider sharing it with others who might need to hear that survival is possible and that their experiences matter. Like this video to help spread awareness about hidden abuse in perfect families. And subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience, justice, and hope. Remember, you are not alone. You are believed. And you are worthy of love that nourishes rather than starves. Wishing you strength, healing, and the freedom to thrive.